Lena Hart never imagined that one act of kindness, carrying shopping bags through a rainstorm for a frail old man, would trap her in a deal with Boston's most dangerous crime family. When armed men in suits showed up at her struggling cafe demanding she accept an invitation, she thought she could refuse. She was wrong. Now, sitting across from Giovanni Moretti, the dying patriarch who built an empire on fear, and his cold-eyed son Dante who runs it, Lena faces an impossible choice: lose everything she's worked for or bind herself to the very people she should run from. If you're hooked, stay until the end to see how far Lena will go to save her dream. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets that October night, turning the cobblestones of Boston's North End into rivers of reflected neon. Inside Lena's corner cafe, the warmth felt like a defiant act against the storm battering the windows. It was nearly 10 o'clock, 2 hours past closing, but Lena Hart moved through the small space with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned that exhaustion was just another ingredient in the recipe of survival. She wiped down the espresso machine for the third time, though it didn't need it. The ritual soothed her. Outside, the street was empty except for the rain and the occasional blur of headlights cutting through the downpour. North End locals knew better than to venture out in weather like this. Only tourists and fools braved Boston storms, and the tourist season had ended weeks ago. The bell above the door chimed. Lena looked up, already forming an apology about being closed, but the words died on her lips. The man who stumbled through the doorway was elderly, 70 at least, with silver hair plastered to his skull and an expensive wool coat soaked through. He carried 2 large designer shopping bags that seemed far too heavy for his frail frame. Water pooled around his Italian leather shoes as he stood there, breathing hard, looking utterly lost. Lena started, then stopped herself. The man was shaking, not just from cold, but from something deeper. Exhaustion, maybe, or pain. Come in. Sit down. She grabbed a clean towel from behind the counter and approached him cautiously, the way you might approach a wounded animal. Up close, she could see the quality of everything he wore. The coat probably cost more than her monthly rent. The watch on his wrist certainly did. But his face was pale, his breathing labored, and his hands trembled as he tried to maintain his grip on the bags. "Let me help you." Lena took the bags gently, surprised by their weight. What the hell was he carrying? Gold bars? She set them carefully beside the corner table and guided the old man into the chair. "When's the last time you ate something?" He looked at her with dark eyes that held decades of stories she couldn't begin to guess at. I'm not sure, signorina. This morning, perhaps." Italian accent, old country, not American-born. Lena felt a flicker of familiarity. The North End was full of Italian grandmothers and grandfathers who'd carried their homeland in their hearts across the Atlantic. But this man, something about him felt different. The quality of his clothes, the weight of his presence, even in exhaustion. "Stay here." She moved back behind the counter and started the espresso machine, muscle memory guiding her hands. "I've got some biscotti left over. Day old, but still good." "You are very kind." His voice was soft, refined. "I did not mean to intrude on your evening." "You're not intruding. I was just killing time before heading upstairs anyway." Lena lived in the tiny apartment above the cafe, a cramped one-bedroom that smelled perpetually of coffee and old wood. She pulled out the biscotti, they were actually from 3 days ago, but they'd keep, and arranged them on a small plate. The espresso machine hissed and gurgled, filling the quiet shop with familiar sounds. Outside, thunder rolled across the city like distant artillery. "Quite a storm," the old man observed, his breathing gradually steadying. "I should not have ventured out. My driver said as much, but I wanted to select the gifts myself. Personal touch, you understand." "Gifts?" Lena set the espresso and biscotti in front of him. "Must be some special occasion." "My granddaughter's birthday." A smile crossed his weathered face, transforming it. "She turns 7 next week. Too young to appreciate Tiffany, perhaps, but her mother will ensure she understands the value when the time comes." Lena watched him wrap his hands around the small cup, seeking its warmth. "Tiffany." Casual mention, like it was nothing. She'd grown up watching every penny, learning to stretch dollars until they screamed. This man's world was so far removed from hers, they might as well be living on different planets. No charge, she said when he reached for his wallet. Consider it my contribution to your granddaughter's birthday. The old man's eyes sharpened, studying her with sudden intensity. You run this establishment alone? I own it alone, work it alone, clean it alone. Lena shrugged, keeping her tone light, even though the words tasted like defeat. Living the American dream, one espresso at a time. Alone is a hard way to dream. He sipped the coffee, and something in his expression softened. But this is excellent. You have skill, signorina? Heart. Lena Hart. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed. And thanks. My grandmother taught me. She used to say that a perfect espresso could save a bad day or make a good one better. Wise woman. He finished the coffee in 3 more small sips, savoring each one. I must go. My son will worry if I am too late, and I have worried him enough already. He stood, steadier now, and Lena felt an unexpected pang of concern. Are you sure? The storm hasn't let up, and you still look— I am old, Miss Hart, not incapable. But his smile took the edge off the words. My car is just down the block. I will manage. Lena glanced at the shopping bags, then at the rain sheeting against the windows. The old man noticed her expression, and his smile widened slightly. I see you are considering the bags and the weather and my advanced years and calculating a problem. I'm calculating that those bags are heavy, it's pouring, and you look like a strong wind could knock you over. Lena grabbed her jacket from the hook by the door. Come on, I'll walk you to your car. Miss Hart, I cannot possibly— You can, and I'm going to. She was already pulling on the jacket, shoving her dark hair up into a messy bun. It's 2 minutes, and I need to take the trash out anyway. It was a lie. The trash could wait until morning, but it gave them both an out. The old man studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. Thank you. The rain was brutal the moment they stepped outside. Lena grabbed the shopping bags. Jesus, what was in these anvils? And hunched against the downpour. The old man moved beside her, surprisingly steady despite the wind trying to shove them sideways. His car was parked 3 storefronts down, a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than Lena's entire business. A man in a dark suit stood beside it, holding an umbrella that whipped uselessly in the wind. He started forward when he saw them, concern etched deep in his face. Mr. Moretti, you should have called. I am fine, Thomas. The old man's voice held authority now, the weakness from the café completely gone. Miss Hart was kind enough to assist me. Thomas, the driver. Lena handed over the shopping bags and the man took them with a grateful nod, tucking them quickly into the car's trunk. Up close, she could see the bulge under his suit jacket. A gun. Professional security, then. The kind that came with serious money or serious danger. Probably both. Miss Hart? The old man turned to her, rain streaming down both their faces. He took her hand in both of his, and the gesture felt oddly formal despite the storm. You showed kindness to a stranger when you had every reason to turn me away. That is increasingly rare in this world. I will not forget it. It was just coffee. But Lena felt something shift in those words, some weight she couldn't quite identify. No, signorina. It was dignity. There is a difference. He held her gaze for another moment, then released her hand and climbed into the back of the Mercedes. Thomas closed the door with practiced efficiency and nodded once more to Lena before hurrying to the driver's seat. The car pulled away into the storm, taillights disappearing into the rain like red stars drowning in black water. Lena stood there getting soaked, watching it go, and tried to shake the strange feeling that had settled over her. It was just an old man buying birthday presents, just a cup of coffee on a rainy night, just kindness, the kind her grandmother had taught her to offer freely because you never knew when you might need it yourself. She went back inside, locked the door, and tried not to think about the way he'd looked at her. Like he was memorizing her face, like he was making a promise. Chat. The next morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Sunlight streamed through the cafe windows, catching dust motes and golden shafts that looked almost holy. Lena had been up since 5, prepping for the early rush. The construction workers who wanted black coffee and bagels, the nurses from Mass General grabbing lattes before their shifts, the handful of regulars who treated her cafe like a second home. By 8:30, the rush had faded to a comfortable trickle. Lena was pulling a double shot for Mrs. Chen, a retired school teacher who'd been coming in every Tuesday and Thursday for 3 years, when the door opened. 4 men walked in. Lena's hand stilled on the espresso machine. The men were identical in the way soldiers were identical. Different faces, same uniform. Dark suits, perfectly tailored. Sunglasses despite being indoors. They moved with coordinated precision, spreading out to cover the cafe's corners and exits with military efficiency. The construction workers at the corner table went silent. Mrs. Chen's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee. The last man through the door was younger than the others, maybe 35, with slicked back hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He approached the counter while his companions stood like statues, hands folded in front of them, radiating controlled violence. "Lena Hart?" His voice was pleasant, conversational. It made Lena's skin crawl. "Who's asking?" She kept her hand steady, finished pulling Mrs. Chen's espresso, slid it across the counter. Mrs. Chen took it and retreated to her table, suddenly fascinated by her phone. "My name's Vincent. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Giovanni Moretti." He placed a cream-colored card on the counter between them. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. An address in Beacon Hill. "He'd like to extend a dinner invitation. Tonight, 7 o'clock. A car will be sent to collect you." Lena stared at the card like it was a snake. "I don't know any Giovanni Moretti." "Sure you do. Old guy, shopping bags, rainy night." Vincent's smile widened. "You were very kind to him. He'd like to thank you properly." "I don't need thanks for common decency." Lena pushed the card back across the counter. "Tell him I appreciate the thought, but I'm busy." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vincent didn't move, didn't stop smiling, but something shifted in the air around him. The other 3 men adjusted their stances almost imperceptibly. Mrs. Chen quietly gathered her things and slipped out the door. "See? That's where we have a problem." Vincent's pleasant tone never wavered. "Mr. Moretti doesn't really do rejections. He's old-fashioned that way. When he invites someone to dinner, they come to dinner." "Then he's about to learn something new." Lena met his eyes directly, refusing to look away even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. "I said no." For a long moment, Vincent just looked at her. Then he laughed, a genuine sound that somehow made everything worse. "You got balls. I'll give you that." He left the card on the counter. 7 o'clock, Miss Hart. The car will be out front. I strongly suggest you be in it." They left as smoothly as they'd entered, the door closing behind them with a gentle chime that seemed obscene in the wake of their departure. The construction workers waited exactly 30 seconds, then threw money on their table and practically ran out. Lena was alone with the card and the sudden understanding that her life had just become very complicated. Yet, she tried to ignore it. Threw the card in the trash, went through her day, served coffee and sandwiches, and tried to pretend her hands weren't shaking. But at 3 o'clock, old Tony came in for his usual afternoon espresso and spotted the tension in her shoulders. Tony had been coming to Lena's corner cafe since the day she opened, 4 years ago. He was a neighborhood lifer, born in the North End, raised in the North End, would die in the North End. He knew everyone, heard everything, and had a talent for reading trouble like other people read newspapers. "What happened?" He settled onto his usual stool, arthritic hands folded on the counter. "Nothing. Just a weird morning." Lena started his espresso without being asked. "Lena," Tony's voice carried 67 years of Boston street wisdom. "I've known you long enough to know when you're lying. You're doing that thing where you clean the same spot over and over. What happened?" She hesitated, then pulled the card from the trash. It felt heavier than it should, like it carried its own gravity. Tony's face went pale when he read it. "Oh, kid. Oh, no." "You know him? This Moretti guy?" Tony looked at her like she'd just asked if the sky was blue. "You really don't know? Giovanni Moretti? Should I?" "Giovanni Moretti," Tony said carefully, "is why the North End doesn't have a gang problem anymore. He's why the streets are safe, why nobody messes with the old folks, why the shops don't get robbed." He paused, letting that sink in. He's also why 3 city councilmen resigned last year, why the Flanagan crew disappeared overnight, and why the FBI can't touch certain operations no matter how hard they try. The espresso machine hissed. Lena's stomach felt like lead. You're telling me he's mafia, Tony said it quietly, like the word itself had power. Old school, the last of the real bosses. His family's run things in Boston for 40 years, and before that, his father ran them. You don't refuse Giovanni Moretti, Lena. People who refuse the Morettis, they learn not to. I gave him coffee. Lena heard her own voice from very far away. That's all, just coffee and a walk to his car. And now he wants to thank you. Tony reached across the counter and gripped her hand. Listen to me. Go to the dinner. Be polite. Accept whatever he offers with gratitude, even if it's just more coffee, and then forget this ever happened. Can you do that? Lena thought about the armed men in her café, the way they'd moved, the casual threat in Vincent's pleasant voice. She thought about her grandmother's lessons on kindness, and how none of those lessons had included what to do when kindness got you tangled up with organized crime. What happens if I don't go? Tony's grip tightened. Nothing good. The Morettis don't make threats, Lena. They don't have to. They make adjustments. Your lease comes up for renewal? Suddenly the building's sold. Business license needs a signature? It gets lost in the system. Little things that add up until you don't have a business anymore. Or a life. That's insane. That's reality. He released her hand. You're a good kid with a good heart, and you got noticed by people who don't forget things. So you smile, you thank the old man for his generosity, and you walk away clean. Understand? Lena nodded because she didn't trust herself to speak. Tony finished his espresso in one shot, usually he savored it, and left a 20 for a $3 drink. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, Giovanni Moretti's got cancer. Terminal. That's the word on the street. He's not long for this world. So maybe this really is just an old man saying thank you before he goes. Then Tony was gone, and Lena was alone with the card and the terrible knowledge that she was already trapped in something she didn't understand. The rest of the day crawled by. Lena went through the motions, serving customers, making small talk, pretending everything was normal. But her mind kept circling back to the card, to Tony's warning, to the 4 men who'd made her cafe feel like a cage. By 6 o'clock, she'd almost convinced herself not to go. By 6:30, she was standing in her tiny apartment, staring at her closet, and trying to remember if she owned anything appropriate for dinner with a dying mob boss. She settled on black pants and a simple gray sweater, professional but not trying too hard, pulled her hair back into a neat ponytail. No jewelry except her grandmother's silver cross, which felt like armor, even though Lena hadn't prayed in years. At 6:55, a black Mercedes, the same one from last night, pulled up outside the cafe. The same driver, Thomas, stepped out and stood by the rear door, patient as stone. Lena locked up the cafe, double-checking the deadbolt even though her hands were shaking, walked to the car on legs that felt disconnected from her body. Thomas opened the door without a word, and she slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly revenue. The door closed with the solid thunk of German engineering. The car pulled away from the curb, and Lena watched her cafe recede in the rear window, the only thing she'd ever owned, the only piece of stability in a life that had been anything but stable. Mr. Moretti is looking forward to seeing you again, Miss Hart. Thomas's voice came from the front seat, professional and careful. He speaks very highly of your kindness. It was just coffee, Lena said for what felt like the 100th time. Mr. Moretti doesn't believe in just anything, miss. He sees meaning where others see coincidence. They drove through Boston's evening streets, down Commercial, past Faneuil Hall, climbing into Beacon Hill where the money lived in brownstones that had stood for 200 years. The Mercedes turned onto a quiet street lined with gas lamps and stopped in front of a mansion that made Lena's breath catch. 4 stories of pristine brick and white columns, windows glowing with warm light, iron gates that probably cost more than her entire building. Thomas opened her door and gestured toward the entrance where another suited man waited. This way, Miss Hart. Lena forced herself to walk steadily, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. The suited man, another Vincent clone, led her through a foyer with marble floors and a chandelier that belonged in a museum. up a sweeping staircase where oil paintings watched her climb, down a hallway lined with more art, more wealth, more evidence that she was so far out of her depth she couldn't even see the surface anymore. He stopped at a heavy wooden door, knocked twice, then opened it. The room beyond was a study, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, leather furniture, a fireplace crackling with real wood. And sitting in a wingback chair, looking healthier than he had in the rain but still bearing the marks of illness, was Giovanni Moretti. "Miss Hart." He rose with effort, but his smile was genuine. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." Before Lena could respond, before she could explain that accepting implied she'd had a choice, a voice cut through the room like a blade through silk. "You didn't give her much choice, did you, Papa?" Lena turned. The man standing by the window was nothing like his father. Giovanni was old-world charm and refinement despite his reputation. This man was something else entirely. Younger, maybe 40, with dark hair cut short, sharp features that looked carved from marble, and eyes that assessed her with the cold precision of a jeweler examining a stone. He wore a suit that made Vincent's look cheap, moved with the contained stillness of a predator deciding whether you were prey or peer. And when those dark eyes met hers, Lena felt the full weight of what Tony had tried to warn her about. This wasn't just money. This wasn't just power. This was danger wearing human skin. "My son, Dante," Giovanni's introduction carried a note of resignation, "who has never learned the value of a gentle approach." Gentle. Dante's voice was silk wrapped around steel. "You send 4 soldiers to her café, Papa. Very gentle." "I sent an invitation." "You sent a threat." Dante moved closer, studying Lena with unnerving intensity. "Miss Hart, I apologize for my father's enthusiasm. He sometimes forgets that not everyone understands the weight of his name." "I'm starting to get the picture," Lena managed. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. Something that might have been amusement flickered across Dante's face. "Are you? Because most people who get the picture don't show up. They run, they hide. They certainly don't stand in my father's study looking like they'd rather fight than flee. I don't run from old men who need help carrying shopping bags." The silence that followed was profound. Then Giovanni laughed, a real laugh, rich and delighted. "You see, Dante, I told you. Spirit, real spirit, so rare these days." Dante didn't laugh. "Spirit gets people killed, Papa. Only when it's stupid spirit. Miss Hart's spirit seems quite intelligent." Giovanni gestured to the chair across from his. "Please sit. We have much to discuss, and I'm told my time for discussions grows shorter by the day." Lena sat because standing felt like capitulation, and capitulation felt like death. Dante remained standing by the window, watching her like a scientist observing an experiment. "You're probably wondering why I invited you here," Giovanni began. The thought crossed my mind. Direct. Good. He settled back into his chair with visible relief. "I am dying, Miss Hart. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors give me perhaps 6 months if I'm fortunate, 3 if I'm not. I have made my peace with this. I have lived a long life, built an empire, raised a son who will carry on what I've created. Most men would be satisfied." He paused, studying the fire. "But I find myself wanting something more in these final months. Something that isn't fear, isn't obligation, isn't the weight of my name. When you gave me that coffee, when you walked me to my car without knowing who I was or what I could do, you treated me like a person, not a boss, not a threat, just an old man who needed help." Lena's throat tightened. "Mr. Moretti, I want to save your cafe," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "I've had my people look into it. Your building is scheduled for redevelopment. Your landlord is selling to a corporation that wants to turn the North End into luxury condos. You'll be evicted in 6 months, 8 at most. Your lease protections are meaningless. They'll find a way around them. They always do." The world tilted. Lena gripped the arms of her chair. "How do you—" "I know everything that happens in my city, Miss Hart. It's how I've survived this long." Giovanni's expression softened. "I can stop it. One phone call, and your building stays residential. Your lease gets a 99-year extension. Your cafe remains exactly where it is. Why? The word came out harsh. Why would you do that? Because I can. Because I want to. And because in exchange I ask for something very simple. He leaned forward slightly. Dinner. Once a week. Here. In this house. With just conversation, perhaps a game of chess if you play. Companionship in my final months from someone who sees Giovanni, not Moretti. Lena stared at him. You want company. I want to remember what it feels like to be human before I die. Giovanni's voice cracked slightly. Is that so terrible? Papa. Dante's voice held a warning. You're not telling her everything. I'm telling her what matters. You're manipulating her. Dante crossed to stand beside his father's chair, and the resemblance between them was suddenly stark despite their age difference. Same bone structure, same intensity, same core of absolute certainty. Miss Hart, my father is offering you a deal that sounds simple but isn't. The building will be purchased by Moretti Holdings. Your cafe will be renovated, upgraded, protected, but you'll pay for it. With dinners, Giovanni protested, hardly a hardship. With 20% of future profits, Dante continued, ignoring him, paid quarterly. And with the understanding that declining this offer means declining our protection. Your building will be sold, you'll be evicted, and when you try to fight it legally, you'll discover that the courts are remarkably sympathetic to the developer's arguments. The fire crackled. Lena felt ice spreading through her chest. So this isn't generosity, she said slowly. This is a trap. This is reality, Dante corrected. My father wants to play benefactor. I'm showing you the full picture. The choice is still yours. Come to dinner once a week, give us a percentage of your profits, and keep your dream. Or refuse and lose everything. Dante, that's enough. No, Papa, she deserves to know what she's agreeing to. Dante's eyes never left Lena's face. We're not saints. We're not even good people. We're offering you a deal that benefits us both, but make no mistake, we hold all the cards. You can't fight us. You can't outmaneuver us. Your only option is to say yes or to walk away with nothing. Lena stood on shaking legs. Both Moretti men watched her, Giovanni with something like hope, Dante with cold assessment. I need time to think. Of course. Giovanni started to rise, but Dante put a hand on his shoulder, keeping him seated. You have 24 hours, Dante said. After that, the building sale proceeds without our interference. Thomas will take you home. Lena walked to the door on autopilot, stopped with her hand on the handle. That coffee I gave you, she said to Giovanni without turning around. Did you know then that you were going to do this? No, signorina. His voice was tired, old. That moment was genuine. This came after, when I realized how rare genuine moments have become in my life. Lena left without responding. Thomas drove her home in silence. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, locked the door, and stood in her kitchen staring at nothing. 24 hours to decide if she'd sell a piece of her soul to the devil. The terrible thing was, she was actually considering it. Lena didn't sleep. She spent the night researching Giovanni Moretti, Dante Moretti, Moretti Holdings, the North End development deals, everything she could find. The internet was surprisingly forthcoming once you knew what to look for. Giovanni Moretti, born in Sicily, immigrated in 1962, built a business empire that included restaurants, construction, waste management. Arrested 12 times, convicted never. 2 wives, both deceased. 1 son, Dante, born 1985. The euphemisms in the articles were almost comical. Alleged organized crime connections. Reputed to have influence, sources suggest. The truth was written between the lines. Giovanni Moretti was exactly what Tony had said. A mob boss. Old school, connected, untouchable. Dante Moretti. Harvard Business School took over family operations in 2015, modernized the organization, expanded into legitimate business ventures. Arrested once, assault charges that disappeared when the victim recanted. Unmarried, no known relationships. Described by one anonymous source as more dangerous than his father ever was, because he doesn't pretend to have a conscience. At 4 in the morning, Lena called the one lawyer she knew, Melissa Garcia, who'd helped her with the cafe's incorporation papers, left a rambling voicemail about development deals and lease protections, and was there anything at all she could do legally? Melissa called back at 8:30. "Lena, I got your message. What the hell is going on?" Lena explained. The building sale, the eviction timeline, the legal dead ends. She didn't mention the Morettis. Some instinct told her to keep that part quiet. "Okay, slow down." Melissa's voice carried the careful calm of someone about to deliver bad news. "I'm looking at the public records now. Your building was sold 3 days ago to a development corporation called North End Renewal LLC. The sale is legitimate, completely legal. Your lease has a standard commercial clause that allows termination with 6 months' notice in the event of substantial renovation or change of use. Can we fight it?" "Fight what? A legal sale and a standard lease clause?" "Lena, I'm sorry, but no. You could maybe drag it out in court for a few extra months, but you'd spend thousands in legal fees just to delay the inevitable." Melissa paused. "Is there something else going on? You sound scared." Lena almost told her, almost explained about Giovanni and Dante and the deal that felt like a noose. But what could Melissa do? What could anyone do against people who made buildings sell and courts comply? "No, just stressed. Thanks for looking into it." "Lena." She hung up before Melissa could push further. The day passed in a blur of customers and routine, but Lena's mind was miles away. She kept seeing Dante's cold eyes, hearing his flat assessment. "You can't fight us. You can't outmaneuver us." At 6 o'clock, the cafe's phone rang. Lena almost didn't answer, but habit made her pick up. Lena's corner cafe. "Miss Hart," Dante's voice, smooth and inevitable as gravity. "Have you made your decision?" "I'm still thinking." "Then let me help you think." He didn't sound angry, just matter of fact. "I had my people pull the numbers on North End Renewal, LLC. They're offering building tenants relocation packages, 3 months rent, first month free in a new space. Very generous by developer standards. For you, that means roughly $12,000 and a vacant storefront in Dorchester. Dorchester. Miles from the North End, from her customers, from everything she'd built. "Meanwhile," Dante continued, "our offer includes a 99-year lease, $50,000 in renovations, and guaranteed protection from future development pressure. Yes, we take 20%, but 20% of a thriving business beats 100% of nothing." "This isn't about money," Lena's voice shook. "This is about you people thinking you can buy anything, anyone." "We can. No apology, no shame." "That's not arrogance, Miss Hart. That's simply how the world works. Money buys influence. Influence buys power. Power buys choices. And right now you don't have any of those things. We do. So I should just surrender? Just accept that I'm powerless?" "I'm saying you should be smart." Dante's tone shifted slightly, something almost like respect creeping in. "You want to fight the system? Fine, but pick battles you can win. This isn't one of them. Take our deal. Keep your cafe. Live to fight another day." Lena closed her eyes. "And your father? This whole thing about companionship and being human is true. My father is dying, and he's terrified of dying as just another monster. He thinks spending time with someone like you, someone untainted by his world, will somehow redeem him." A pause. "It won't. But it might give him peace. That's worth something. But to him, what's it worth to me? Your dream, your future, the thing your grandmother taught you to build." Dante let that sink in. 7 o'clock tomorrow night, same address. Say yes or walk away and never look back. But understand, Miss Hart, if you walk away, we're not your enemies. We're simply not your allies. And in this city, not having allies is the same as having enemies. The line went dead. Lena stood holding the phone, feeling the walls of her small cafe pressing in. This place was everything. 4 years of 16-hour days, of living on nothing so the business could survive, of building something real from nothing. Her grandmother had worked 3 jobs to send her to community college, had died before seeing Lena open this place, but had made her promise to build something lasting, something good, something worth fighting for, her grandmother had said. But how did you fight when the fight was already lost? At midnight, Lena pulled out her laptop and did something she'd sworn she'd never do. Researched bankruptcy procedures. What it would take to walk away clean. Start over somewhere else. Maybe Portland or Providence or anywhere that wasn't Boston and the Moretti shadow. At 2 a.m, she walked through her cafe, touching the espresso machine she'd bought secondhand, and restored herself. The tables she'd refinished, the photos of the neighborhood that covered one wall. Every inch of this place was built from her hands, her hope, her grandmother's lessons about kindness and hard work and never giving up. At 4, she made her decision. At 7, she was sitting in Giovanni Moretti's study again, Dante watching from the shadows, and her voice was steady when she spoke. I'll take your deal, but we're renegotiating the terms. Dante's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes, surprise maybe, or the faintest edge of respect. Giovanni leaned forward in his chair, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Renegotiate? Dante's voice carried dangerous amusement. You think you're in a position to negotiate? I think you want something from me that you can't take by force. Lena kept her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. Your father wants companionship, genuine human connection. You can't threaten that into existence. So yes, I'm negotiating. Giovanni's smile widened. Dante, I like her. Papa, this isn't a game. Everything is a game, my son. The question is whether you respect your opponent enough to play it well. Giovanni gestured for Lena to continue. What are your terms, Miss Hart? Lena pulled out the list she'd written at 5 that morning, her hands steadier now that she'd committed to the path. First, the profit share. 20% is excessive. I'll agree to 15, and it doesn't start until after the renovations are complete and I've had 3 months to rebuild my customer base. Done. Giovanni said it before Dante could object. Second, the weekly dinners. I'll commit to them while you're alive, Mr. Moretti, but the obligation ends with you. It doesn't transfer to anyone else. She looked directly at Dante. No offense. None taken. Dante's voice was flat. Continue. Third, I want everything in writing, a real contract reviewed by my lawyer, and I want a clause that allows me to exit the agreement if certain conditions aren't met, specific, measurable conditions that we agree on up front. Such as? Giovanni's eyes gleamed with interest. If the renovations aren't completed within 6 months, if you or your organization engages in any illegal activity on my premises, if I'm asked to do anything beyond what we explicitly agree to tonight, Lena's voice hardened. Voice, I'm not signing a blank check, Mr. Moretti. I'll give you dinner and conversation, but I won't give you my conscience. The silence stretched. The fire crackled. Dante moved to stand behind his father's chair, and the 2 Moretti men exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation Lena couldn't hear. You've thought about this carefully, Giovanni said finally. I didn't sleep. Neither did I. The cancer makes sleep difficult. He settled back with a sigh. Your terms are acceptable, Miss Hart. Dante will have contracts drawn up by tomorrow. You'll have a week to review them with your lawyer. We'll reconvene next Friday to sign, and your first dinner will be that same evening. Papa, we should discuss. There's nothing to discuss. Giovanni's tone carried steel beneath the weariness. Miss Hart has shown more courage in one conversation than most people show in a lifetime. She deserves respect, not manipulation. Draw up the contracts as she specified. Dante's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I'll need her lawyer's information. Lena recited Melissa's contact details, watching Dante tap them into his phone with precise, controlled movements. Every gesture calculated, every word measured. She wondered if he ever let himself be spontaneous, if there was anything beneath that cold control besides more cold control. One more thing, Lena said. The dinners. I need to understand what you actually want from them, Mr. Moretti. Because if this is some elaborate setup for something else, I'd rather know now. Elaborate setup. Giovanni laughed, but it dissolved into coughing that racked his thin frame. Dante was there instantly, a hand on his father's shoulder, and for just a moment the mask slipped, raw concern crossing his face before the ice returned. When the coughing subsided, Giovanni waved away the glass of water Dante offered. I am dying, Miss Hart, and I have discovered that dying concentrates the mind wonderfully. For 40 years, I built an empire. I made men fear me. I gave orders and watched them followed without question. I shaped this city to my will. He gestured around the study at the leather-bound books and priceless art. And now, at the end, I look at all of it and wonder what it means, whether any of it mattered, whether I'll be remembered as anything more than a name that made people nervous. You will be, Dante said quietly. You built something that will last. I built fear, Dante. Fear doesn't last. It evaporates the moment the feared man dies. Giovanni's eyes found Lena's again. But kindness echoes. You gave me coffee and carried my bags without knowing my name, without wanting anything in return. In that moment, I wasn't Giovanni Moretti. I was just an old man, and you treated me with dignity. His voice dropped. I want more of those moments before I go. Dinners where I'm not the boss. Conversations where people aren't calculating what I can do for them or to them. Chess games where my opponent actually tries to win instead of letting me because they're afraid not to. Is that so much to ask? Lena felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't manipulation, or if it was wrapped around a core of genuine loneliness that made it hard to breathe. What if I can't give you that? She asked. What if every time I look at you, all I see is the threat? The power? Then we'll both have failed, won't we? Giovanni smiled sadly. But I think you're stronger than that, Miss Hart. I think you see people clearly, their flaws and their humanity both. It's why you'll succeed where others have failed. Dante made a sound that might have been disagreement, but when Lena glanced at him, his expression was unreadable. Friday then, she said, standing. I'll review the contracts and let you know if there are any issues. Thomas will drive you home. Giovanni remained seated, exhaustion evident in every line of his face. And Miss Hart, thank you for taking a chance on a dying man's vanity. It's not vanity, Lena said. It's just human. She left before either of them could respond, but she felt Dante's eyes following her all the way to the door. The drive home was silent again, but this time Lena's mind was racing. She'd just agreed to have dinner once a week with a man who'd built an empire on violence and fear. She'd negotiated with his son, who looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. She'd tied her future to people who existed in a world so far removed from her own that they might as well be from different planets. And yet there'd been something real in Giovanni's voice when he talked about dying, something genuine in his request for simple human connection. Lena had learned young to read people. Growing up poor taught you to spot lies quickly, because lies could cost you everything. Giovanni Moretti was many things, most of them terrible, but in that moment he hadn't been lying. He was just an old man who didn't want to die alone. Back in her apartment, Lena sat at her grandmother's old kitchen table and tried to process what she'd done. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Contracts will be delivered Wednesday morning. My father asked me to tell you he's looking forward to Friday. Dante Moretti. She stared at the message, then typed back, Tell him I am too, sort of. The response came immediately. Honesty, refreshing. Lena set the phone down and looked around her tiny apartment, the second-hand furniture, the walls that needed painting, the window that overlooked the cafe's back alley. This place, this life, it was hers. Built from nothing, sustained by stubbornness and her grandmother's lessons about hard work. Now it was bound to the Morettis. For better or worse. She went to bed but didn't sleep, and when dawn came, she was already in the cafe, pulling espresso shots and trying to pretend her world hadn't just tilted sideways. The contracts arrived Wednesday at 9 in the morning, delivered by a woman in an expensive suit who introduced herself as Patricia Chen, senior partner at Chen & Associates. She carried a leather briefcase and the air of someone who'd never lost an argument in her life. Mr. Moretti asked me to deliver these personally and answer any questions you might have. Patricia set the briefcase on Lena's counter, seeming unbothered by the morning rush of customers. I've prepared summary sheets highlighting the key terms, but I encourage you to read the full documents carefully. Lena stared at the thick stack of papers Patricia pulled out. All of this for a cafe lease and dinner arrangement? Mr. Moretti is thorough. Patricia's smile was professional. He's also aware that you'll be having your own lawyer review these, so I've included contact information for any clarifications she might need. Take your time. The terms are exactly as discussed. Nothing hidden, no surprises. And if my lawyer finds problems, then we'll address them. Patricia handed Lena a business card. I'm available 24/7 for questions. Mr. Moretti wants you to feel comfortable with every aspect of this agreement. After Patricia left, Lena texted Melissa. Can you come to the cafe today? I need you to look at something. Melissa arrived at 2 during the afternoon lull. Lena locked the front door, flipped the sign to closed, and spread the contracts across her largest table. Okay, what's... Melissa stopped when she saw the letterhead. Chen and Associates? Lena, they're one of the top corporate law firms in Boston. How did you... Wait. Is this about the building situation? It's complicated. Uncomplicated. So Lena explained. Not everything. She left out the armed men and the implicit threats. But enough. The Morettis' offer. The terms she'd negotiated. The contracts that would save her cafe in exchange for weekly dinners and a percentage of profits. Melissa listened in growing disbelief. You negotiated with the Morettis. The actual Morettis. You know who they are? Everyone in Boston legal circles knows who they are. Lena, they're dangerous people, connected. Giovanni Moretti has been investigated by everyone from the FBI to the state attorney general, and nothing ever sticks because people are too scared to testify. Melissa gripped Lena's arm. What made you think this was a good idea? The part where I lose my cafe if I don't accept. So you jump from the frying pan into the fire. I jump into the only lifeboat available. Lena pulled her arm free gently. Melissa, I've researched every legal option. You confirmed there's nothing I can do to stop the building sale. This is my only choice. Melissa sank into a chair, running her hands through her hair. All right, okay, let me look at these contracts. If you're doing this, we're making damn sure they're airtight. For the next 4 hours, Melissa went through every page with the focus of a surgeon. She made notes, highlighted sections, muttered legal jargon under her breath. Lena made coffee and tried not to panic. Finally, Melissa looked up. I hate to say this, but these contracts are fair. Surprisingly fair. The terms are exactly what you described. The exit clauses are clear and reasonable. The renovation specs are detailed and generous. There's even a clause protecting you from any criminal liability if, and I'm quoting here, any activities conducted by Moretti Holdings or associated entities result in legal action. That's good. That's shockingly good. It means if the Morettis get in trouble with the law, you can't be held responsible just for having a contract with them. Melissa tapped the page. Whoever wrote this was protecting you as much as them. Lena thought of Dante's cold eyes, his assessment that she deserved to know the full picture. What about the profit percentage? Can they raise it later? Not without your written consent. It's locked at 15% for the duration of the agreement. And look at this. Melissa flipped to another section. The renovations are estimated at $50,000, but there's a clause saying if costs exceed that, Moretti Holdings covers it, not you. You're not on the hook for anything beyond the profit share. So I should sign? Melissa set down her pen and looked at Lena directly. Legally, these contracts are solid. You'd be hard-pressed to find better terms from any legitimate investor. But Lena, this isn't just business. You're tying yourself to people who operate outside the law. Weekly dinners with Giovanni Moretti means you're in his world, even if just peripherally. Are you really okay with that? Lena thought about her grandmother, who'd cleaned houses for rich families and come home exhausted but never defeated. Who taught Lena that survival sometimes meant compromise, but that compromise didn't have to mean surrender. I'm okay with keeping my dream alive, she said finally, whatever it takes. Melissa nodded slowly. Then I'll call Patricia Chen and confirm the terms are acceptable. But Lena, be careful. Please. These people, they're not like us. I know. But she didn't, not really, not yet. The contracts were signed Friday afternoon in Giovanni's study, with Patricia Chen and Melissa both present as witnesses. Dante stood by the window again, silent and watchful. Giovanni sat at his desk, looking frailer than before, but his hands were steady as he signed his name. When it was done, Patricia collected the documents and shook everyone's hands with professional warmth. Melissa left with promises to call if Lena needed anything, though her worried glance said she thought Lena would definitely need something. Then it was just Lena, Giovanni, and Dante in the study's heavy silence. "Well," Giovanni said, "that's the business concluded. Now we can focus on more pleasant matters. Shall we have dinner?" Dante stirred. "Papa, you should rest before—" "I've rested enough for 3 lifetimes." Giovanni rose with effort, waving away Dante's offered arm. "Miss Hart, would you join me in the dining room? I promise the food is excellent, even if the company is questionable." The dining room was as opulent as the rest of the house. A table that could seat 20, paintings that belonged in museums, a chandelier that probably cost more than Lena's entire inventory, but it was set for just 2, intimate despite the grand space. Giovanni took the head of the table and gestured for Lena to sit on his right. Dante lingered in the doorway. "I'll be in my office if you need anything." "We'll be fine, Dante. Go manage something." But Giovanni's tone was affectionate. After Dante left, he turned to Lena with a conspiratorial smile. "My son doesn't approve of this arrangement." "I noticed. Why not?" "Because Dante sees risk in everything. It's what makes him good at what he does, but it's also exhausting." Giovanni poured wine from a crystal decanter, red, deep as blood. "He thinks I'm being sentimental and foolish, that you'll disappoint me or betray me or simply bore me." "Will I?" "I don't think so. You're here, aren't you, despite every reason to run?" He raised his glass. "To unlikely partnerships and second chances." Lena touched her glass to his, the crystal ringing clear and bright. The wine was probably worth more than her weekly revenue, rich and complex on her tongue. Dinner was served by silent staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. Courses of food Lena couldn't even name, each one more elaborate than the last. Giovanni ate little but talked constantly, asking about her grandmother, her childhood, how she'd ended up in Boston. Lena found herself answering honestly, surprised by how easy he was to talk to when he wasn't being a crime boss. He listened with genuine interest, asked follow-up questions, laughed at her stories about café disasters and difficult customers. "You remind me of my first wife," he said during dessert. "Lucia. She had your spirit, your refusal to be intimidated." His eyes went distant. "She died young. Car accident, they said. But I always wondered—" He trailed off and Lena didn't push. Some wounds were too deep for first dinners. "Do you play chess?" Giovanni asked abruptly. "My grandmother taught me. I'm not very good." "Perfect. I'm tired of playing people who let me win." He stood, moving toward a chess set arranged on a side table. "One game before you go?" They played for an hour. Giovanni was ruthless, exploiting every mistake Lena made with the efficiency of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading opponents. She lost spectacularly, but learned more about chess in 60 minutes than she had in years of casual games. "You're better than you think," Giovanni said as he captured her king. "You just need to trust your instincts more. Stop second-guessing yourself." That's life advice disguised as chess strategy. All good chess advice is life advice disguised. He began resetting the pieces. "Same time next week?" "That's the deal." "No, Miss Hart. The deal is obligation. I'm asking if you'll come because you want to, not because you have to." Lena studied him, this old man with blood on his hands and loneliness in his eyes. "Ask me again after a few more dinners. I need to see if you can keep being human when I'm not looking." Giovanni's laugh was genuine. "Fair enough. Thomas will drive you home." In the car, Lena stared out at Boston's night streets and tried to make sense of what had just happened. She'd had dinner with a mob boss and actually enjoyed it, played chess and felt challenged rather than threatened, talked about her grandmother and felt heard rather than judged. It should have felt wrong. Instead, it just felt strange, like stepping into a parallel world where the rules were different but the people were just as real. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Dante. "My father asked me to thank you. He said you gave him hope. Lena stared at the message, then typed. Hope for what? That he might be remembered as more than a monster. That's all he wants in the end. To know his life meant something beyond fear. She didn't respond. What could she say to that? The renovation started Monday morning. Lena arrived at the café to find a team of contractors already there, led by a woman named Sophia, who had a tablet full of plans and the no-nonsense attitude of someone who got things done. Mr. Moretti wants this completed in 4 months, Sophia said, showing Lena the designs. New espresso machine, commercial grade, expanded kitchen, better workflow, updated electrical, new flooring, fresh paint, the works. Lena looked at the plans and felt her throat tighten. It was everything she'd dreamed of but could never afford. Can you really do all this in 4 months? I've got 3 crews rotating. We work around your business hours. You stay open, we work nights and weekends. Sophia's smile was professional. Mr. Moretti was very clear. Your cafe doesn't lose a single day of revenue during construction. That must cost a fortune. Not your problem. Your only job is to keep serving coffee and approve the finish selections. Sophia handed her a folder. These are the options for countertops, flooring, paint colors. Pick what you want by Wednesday. The first week of construction was chaos barely contained. The crews were efficient and respectful, but having strangers tearing apart her cafe every night was surreal. Lena would close at 8, and by 8:30 there'd be a dozen workers swarming the space. She'd come down at 6 the next morning to find everything cleaned up, progress made, and a detailed update note from Sophia. Her second Friday dinner with Giovanni felt different, more comfortable, less performative. They talked about books. He was reading Dante's Inferno again, finding new meaning in the circles of hell as his own death approached. They played 2 games of chess. Lena won the second one, and Giovanni's delight was genuine. You're learning, he said approvingly. Faster than I expected. Next week I'll have to actually try. You weren't trying tonight? I was testing. Now I know what you're capable of. He poured them both wine. Tell me something, Miss Hart. Are you afraid of me? Lena considered lying, then remembered his request for honesty. Sometimes. When I remember who you are and what you've done, but then you laugh at one of my jokes or make a terrible pun about chess pieces, and I forget for a while. Good. Giovanni nodded. Fear has its uses, but it makes poor company. I'm glad you can forget sometimes. Dante appeared in the doorway. Papa, it's late. You should rest. I'm not tired. You're exhausted. I can see it. Dante's voice was gentle but firm. Miss Hart, thank you for coming. Thomas will take you home. Giovanni started to protest, but a coughing fit cut him off. This one was worse than before, leaving him gasping. Dante was there with water and pills, murmuring something in Italian that Lena couldn't understand. She slipped out quietly, leaving father and son to their private moment. But in the car, she couldn't stop thinking about the fear in Dante's eyes when his father couldn't catch his breath. The way his cold control had shattered into raw concern. Whatever else Dante Moretti was, he loved his father. That much was clear. The weeks began to establish a rhythm. Monday through Thursday, Lena ran her cafe and watched the renovations transform her space into something beyond her wildest dreams. Friday nights, she had dinner with Giovanni, played chess, talked about everything from philosophy to food to the nature of regret. Giovanni's health declined visibly. Each week he seemed frailer, his skin more translucent, his energy fading faster. But his mind stayed sharp, and his insistence on honesty never wavered. I've killed people, he told her during their 6th dinner, apropos of nothing. Ordered deaths, destroyed lives. I won't pretend otherwise, and I won't ask for forgiveness I haven't earned. Lena set down her wine glass carefully. Why tell me this? Because you're looking at me like I'm just a lonely old man, and I need you to remember I'm a lonely old man who's done monstrous things. The cancer doesn't erase that. Your kindness doesn't redeem it. He met her eyes directly. I want your company, Miss Hart, but I want it honest, not built on pretty lies about who I am. I know who you are. Lena's voice was steady. I've researched you. I know about the trials, the accusations, the people who disappeared. I'm not naive. Then why do you keep coming? Because, Lena paused, searching for truth. Because knowing what you've done and seeing who you are right now aren't mutually exclusive. You're dying, and you're scared, and you want to be remembered as human. That doesn't excuse anything you've done, but it's still real. Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. My son thinks I'm using you, manipulating your compassion for my own comfort. Are you? Yes. The honesty was brutal, but I also genuinely enjoy your company. Both things can be true. Lena stood, suddenly needing space. I should go. Of course. Giovanni didn't try to stop her. Same time next week? She nodded and left, but his words followed her home. The uncomfortable truth that she was being used, that her kindness was just another tool in a dying man's desperate bid for peace. It should have made her angry. Instead, it just made her sad. The next morning, Lena opened the café to find Dante Moretti sitting at her corner table, drinking espresso like he belonged there. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly revenue and looked completely out of place among the construction workers and nurses grabbing their morning coffee. We're not open yet, Lena said, though customers were already filing in behind her. Your door was unlocked. I took that as an invitation. Dante gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit, please. Lena wanted to refuse on principle, but something in his expression stopped her. He looked tired, not physically, but in some deeper way that reminded her uncomfortably of his father. She poured herself an espresso and sat down. My father told me about last night's conversation, Dante said without preamble, about his confession. He shouldn't have done that. Probably not, but honesty is his new obsession, and I can't argue with a dying man's wishes. Dante turned his cup in precise circles on the table. You left upset. I left thoughtful. There's a difference. Is there? Because my father is convinced he's driven you away, that you won't come back Friday. Dante's dark eyes fixed on her. Will you? Lena had spent half the night asking herself the same question. I don't know yet. I need to think. Think faster. He doesn't have time for you to process at leisure. The words were harsh, but Dante's tone was almost pleading. Look, I don't like this arrangement. I think my father is being manipulative and you're being naive, but it's making him happy in a way I haven't seen in years. So I'm begging, don't abandon him now. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm trying to figure out if I can keep doing this without losing myself in the process. Lena leaned forward. Your father admitted he's using me, that he's manipulating my compassion. How am I supposed to just accept that and keep showing up? By understanding that being used doesn't diminish the value of what you're giving. Dante's voice dropped. My father is dying alone, Miss Hart. He has money, power, respect, all the things people think matter. But at night, when the pain is bad and the medication doesn't work, he has nothing. No one wants to be near him except people who are paid to be there or too scared to leave. He has you. I'm his son. I don't count. He can't be vulnerable with me because I'm supposed to be strong enough to carry his legacy. Dante's mask slipped for just a moment, showing something raw underneath. You're the only person in his life who sees him as just a man. Flawed, dying, human. That's worth more than you know. Lena studied him, this cold, controlled man who'd just revealed more emotion in 30 seconds than he had in all their previous interactions combined. You really love him. He's my father. Of course I love him. Dante's mask snapped back into place. But love doesn't change facts. He did terrible things. He hurt people. He built an empire on fear and violence. And now he's terrified that's all he'll be remembered for. So I'm supposed to be his redemption? His proof that he was more than a monster? No, you're supposed to be his friend. That's all. Someone who shares dinner and plays chess and doesn't flinch when he coughs blood into a napkin. Dante stood, straightening his suit. But if you can't do that, I understand. Just tell me now so I can prepare him for the disappointment. He started toward the door and Lena heard herself speak before she could think better of it. I'll be there Friday. Tell him I'll be there. Dante paused, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Thank you. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with her espresso and the growing certainty that she was getting in deeper than she'd ever intended. The week crawled by. The cafe renovations accelerated. Sophia's crews worked with focused intensity, transforming Lena's small space into something that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. The new espresso machine arrived Wednesday, all gleaming chrome and precise engineering. Lena spent hours learning its controls, marveling at the consistency it produced. "This machine costs $40,000, she told Sophia, running her hands over its perfect surface. "I looked it up." Sophia just smiled. "Mr. Moretti wants the best for your cafe. He said you deserve equipment that matches your skill." Thursday night, Lena stood in her transformed cafe and tried to process the reality of what was happening. In 3 months, the Morettis had given her everything she'd dreamed of: professional equipment, expanded space, a renovation that would have taken her decades to afford on her own. And all it had cost her was 15% of future profits and weekly dinners with a dying man. It should have felt like a fair trade. Instead, it felt like a debt she could never fully repay. Friday evening, Thomas picked her up at 6:30. The drive to Beacon Hill had become familiar now, almost routine. But tonight felt different, heavier somehow, like the air before a storm. Giovanni was waiting in the study rather than the dining room. He looked worse than last week. The cancer was winning, eating him from the inside out. But his smile when he saw Lena was genuine. "You came. Dante said you would, but I wasn't sure I believed him." "I said I would." Lena settled into her usual chair. "I keep my promises, Mr. Moretti." "Giovanni, please. We've shared enough dinners that you can use my name." He poured wine with shaking hands, and Lena pretended not to notice. "I owe you an apology for last week. I was too honest." "You were exactly honest enough. I appreciate it, actually. Better than pretty lies." Dante said something similar. Giovanni sipped his wine carefully. "He also said I should stop testing you, that you've proven yourself already." "Testing me how?" "By seeing if honesty would drive you away, if confronting the reality of who I am would make you run." Giovanni's smile was sad. "It's a habit from a long life of trusting no one. I wanted to see if you were real or just playing a part." "And what did you conclude?" "That you're terrifyingly real, Miss Hart. That you actually mean the kindness you show, and that makes you either very brave or very foolish." "Can't I be both?" Giovanni laughed, which turned into coughing. Lena waited patiently while he recovered, handing him water when the fit subsided. This had become part of their routine too, the illness neither of them acknowledged directly, but both worked around. "Shall we eat?" Giovanni stood with visible effort. "I've had the chef prepare something special tonight. Ossobuco, like my mother used to make in Sicily." Dinner was quieter than usual. Giovanni's energy faded quickly, forcing him to pause between bites, to rest his fork while he gathered strength. Lena kept the conversation light, stories about cafe customers, funny moments from the renovation, anything that didn't require much response. "You're being kind again," Giovanni observed, "carrying the conversation so I can rest." "I'm being practical. If you exhaust yourself now, you won't have energy for chess later." "Ah, yes, chess, where you've been systematically destroying my ego." But he smiled. "I taught Dante to play when he was 7. He was ruthless even then, beat me consistently by age 10. Do you know what he said when I asked him to let me win sometimes?" "What?" "He said that would be disrespectful, that I deserved an opponent who tried their best, not one who patronized me with false victories." Giovanni's eyes went distant. He was right, of course. He usually is, but it made for some very humbling years. "Where is Dante tonight? I haven't seen him." "Working, always working," Giovanni sighed. "He thinks he needs to have everything perfect before I die. The business secure, the succession planned, every possible problem anticipated. As if life can be controlled like a chess game. Can it? Only by people who forget that the other players have their own strategies. Dante's brilliant, Miss Hart, but he's too controlled, too afraid of chaos." Giovanni met her eyes. He needs someone who can show him that not everything requires a plan, that sometimes the best moments are the unscripted ones. Lena felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting." Nothing, just an old man's observation. But Giovanni's smile was knowing. Shall we play? They played chess in the study, one game that stretched for over an hour. Lena won by the narrowest margin, capturing Giovanni's king in a move he didn't see coming. He sat back in his chair, studying the board with something like pride. You're getting dangerous. Another few months and I won't be able to beat you at all. The words hung in the air. Another few months. They both knew Giovanni didn't have another few months. Then I'll have to find a new chess opponent, Lena said lightly. Any suggestions? Dante plays. Though he'll be less forgiving than I am. Giovanni started resetting the pieces, then stopped. Miss Hart, Lena, can I ask you something personal? You can ask. I might not answer. Fair enough. He studied her carefully. Why haven't you ever married? A woman your age with your qualities. I was engaged once, college boyfriend. He left when he realized I was serious about opening the café. Said I cared more about coffee than about us. Lena shrugged. He was probably right. And since then? Since then, I've been building something that can't leave me. The cafe doesn't care if I work too much or dream too hard or want things it can't give me. She smiled, but it felt brittle. It's safer that way. Safer, but lonelier. Giovanni's voice was gentle. I know something about choosing safety over connection, Lena. About building walls so high that nothing can hurt you. It works until it doesn't. Until you're 75 and dying and realize you spent so much time protecting yourself that you forgot to actually live. Is that what you did? In my own way. I had wives, a son, an empire. But I kept them all at arm's length because getting close meant being vulnerable. And vulnerable men don't survive in my world. He paused. I'm telling you this because I see the same instinct in you, the same fear. And I want you to know that it's okay to let people in sometimes, even when it's scary. Lena felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back angrily. You're doing it again.
Being wise and human and making me forget you're a mob boss. I'm doing it because I'm dying, and I've run out of time to be anything but honest.
Giovanni reached across and gripped her hand. You've given me a gift these past months, Lena. You've reminded me what it feels like to be seen as a person, not a position. Let me give you something in return. Advice from a foolish old man who learned everything too late. Don't wait until you're dying to be brave about the things that matter. Before Lena could respond, Dante appeared in the doorway. His expression was carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes when he saw his father holding Lena's hand. Papa, Dr. Chen called. He wants you to come in for tests tomorrow. I'm done with tests. They can't tell me anything I don't already know. But Giovanni released Lena's hand and stood slowly. Though I suppose I should keep the appointment, don't want to give the good doctor grounds for I told you so lectures. He turned to Lena. Thank you for tonight, for every night, for being real when everyone else is performing. Giovanni, go home, Lena. Get some rest. I'll see you next Friday. He moved toward the door, pausing to grip Dante's shoulder. Walk Miss Hart out, would you? And don't be an ass about it. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with Dante in the chess-scattered study. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Dante stood by the window, backlit by Boston's nighttime glow, looking like a figure from a Renaissance painting, all sharp angles and controlled stillness. He's getting worse, Dante said finally. I noticed. Dr. Chen says it's a matter of weeks now, maybe a month if we're lucky. Dante's voice was flat, emotionless, but his hands gripped the windowsill with white-knuckled force. He's refusing most treatments. Says he wants to stay lucid for as long as possible. I'm sorry. Don't be. He's lived longer than most people in his position, and he's dying on his own terms, which is more than most get. Dante turned to face her. But I wanted to thank you. These Friday dinners? They've given him something to look forward to, a reason to fight through the bad days. You don't have to thank me. We have a contract. Fuck the contract. The profanity was startling, coming from someone so controlled. You could fulfill the letter of that agreement by showing up and sitting in silence. Instead, you talk to him like he's your friend. You laugh at his terrible jokes. You beat him at chess and make him feel alive instead of dying. Dante crossed to the chess table, picking up the black king. He told me last week that you're the best thing that's happened to him in years, that he'd trade everything he's built for a few more months of Friday dinners with someone who sees him clearly and likes him anyway. He said that? He did, and he was right. Dante set the piece down with careful precision. You're good for him, Miss Hart. Better than I am. I can manage his empire and coordinate his care and handle all the practical matters, but I can't give him what you give him. What's that? Hope that he was more than the terrible things he did. That somewhere beneath the violence and the fear, there was a man worth knowing. Dante's dark eyes met hers. Is there? A man worth knowing? Lena thought about Giovanni's laughter over chess, his stories about Sicily, the way he listened to her café disasters with genuine interest. She thought about his confession of manipulation and his advice about bravery. Yes, she said quietly, there's a man worth knowing. He's flawed and complicated, and he's done things I can't forgive. But he's also funny and wise and surprisingly kind when he forgets to be anything else. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Relief, maybe, or gratitude. Thank you for saying that. For meaning it. I do mean it. But Dante? Lena hesitated. What happens after, when he's gone? After our contract ends. You get to keep everything we've provided, the renovations, the lease, all of it. The profit percentage continues, but you'll be dealing with Moretti Holdings accountants, not with us directly. You'll be free to live your life without any further obligations. And you? What will you do? Dante's smile was sad. Run the empire. Become what my father was, or possibly something worse. Continue the family legacy of making people nervous and sleeping poorly. He paused. Why do you ask? Because somewhere over the past months, Lena had started seeing Dante as more than just Giovanni's cold-eyed son. She'd noticed the way he cared for his father with rough tenderness, the concern that broke through his control when Giovanni struggled to breathe, the exhaustion of a man carrying impossible weight. Just curious, she said instead. You've been part of this arrangement too, even if you're not at the dinners. Well, I'm the lawyer and the logistics manager, the person who makes sure the contract is honored and my father's wishes are fulfilled. Dante moved toward the door. Come on. Thomas is waiting to take you home. They walked down the hallway in silence. At the top of the grand staircase, Dante paused. Lena, Miss Hart, can I ask you something? You can ask. Do you hate us, my father and me, for forcing you into this situation? Lena considered the question carefully. I hated you at first. When those men came to my cafe and made it clear I didn't have a choice. But now, she trailed off, searching for the right words. Now I think you're people doing your best in an impossible situation. Your father is trying to find meaning before he dies. You're trying to give him that while also managing an empire and dealing with your own grief. It's complicated. That's diplomatic. That's honest. She met his eyes. You asked for honesty, you get honesty. I don't hate you. I don't love you. I'm just trying to navigate a situation I never wanted and make the best of it. Fair enough? Dante started down the stairs, then stopped again. For what it's worth, I'm glad my father chose you. Out of everyone in Boston he could have pressured into this arrangement, I'm glad it was someone with enough spine to renegotiate the terms and enough heart to actually care. He left her at the bottom of the stairs and disappeared into another wing of the house. Thomas appeared as if summoned, opening the front door with his usual professional silence. In the car, Lena leaned her head against the cool window and tried to make sense of her tangled feelings. She'd started this arrangement out of necessity, viewing it as a business transaction dressed up as charity. But somewhere along the way, Giovanni had become more than just the dying mob boss who owned her lease. He'd become someone she genuinely looked forward to seeing. Someone whose stories she wanted to hear and whose company she enjoyed. And Dante. Dante was still cold and controlled and slightly terrifying. But she'd seen the cracks in his armor now. The way he loved his father despite everything. The exhaustion of carrying too much responsibility alone. The loneliness that mirrored her own in strange, uncomfortable ways. It would be easier if they were monsters. If Giovanni was purely manipulative and Dante was purely cruel. But they weren't. They were human, deeply flawed, morally compromised, but undeniably human. and that made everything infinitely more complicated. The following Tuesday, Lena was training her new assistant barista, a college student named Maya, who was earnest and clumsy in equal measure, when a man in an expensive suit walked into the cafe. Not one of Dante's people. This man carried himself differently, with the aggressive confidence of someone who believed the world owed him deference. Lena Hart? He didn't wait for confirmation. My name is Richard Castellano. I represent the North End Renewal Corporation. Lena's stomach dropped. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. I'm not selling anything. I'm offering you an opportunity. Castellano pulled out a business card and a folded document. We're prepared to buy out your lease and provide relocation assistance. Very generous terms, $60,000 plus first and last month's rent on a comparable commercial space. My lease isn't for sale. Everything's for sale, Miss Hart. The question is price. Castellano's smile didn't reach his eyes. We know about your arrangement with Moretti Holdings. Old man's got cancer, won't be around much longer. When he goes, you think his son is going to honor some sentimental deal about weekly dinners? You're a loose end, sweetheart, and Moretti's clean up loose ends. Maya had stopped making coffee, watching the interaction with wide eyes. The other customers were equally attentive, and Lena felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment. Get out of my cafe. Just consider the offer. $60,000, clean break, no strings attached. Better than waiting around to see how the new boss handles his father's charity cases. Castellano dropped the card and document on the counter. You've got my number. Call me when you're ready to be smart about this. He left, and the cafe erupted in whispered conversations. Lena grabbed the document and card, crumpling both in her fist. Are you okay? Maya asked quietly. I'm fine. Can you handle the counter for a few minutes? I need to make a call. In her apartment upstairs, Lena pulled out her phone and stared at Dante's contact information. She'd never called him before. All their communication had been through scheduled dinners or his occasional texts. But Castellano's words kept echoing in her head. Loose end, charity case, clean up. She dialed before she could talk herself out of it. Dante answered on the second ring. Miss Hart, is something wrong? A man named Richard Castellano just came to my cafe. He's from North End Renewal, the development corporation. He offered to buy out my lease. Silence on the other end. Then, what exactly did he say? Lena recounted the conversation, including Castellano's implications about her being a loose end that would be cleaned up after Giovanni's death. She heard something that might have been a sharp exhale. Stay where you are. I'm sending someone to get that document. Do not sign anything. Do not talk to Castellano again, and do not leave your cafe until I call you back. Dante, what's... But he'd already hung up. 20 minutes later, Vincent appeared, the same man who'd delivered Giovanni's dinner invitation months ago. He took the crumpled document and Castellano's card without comment, then stationed himself at a corner table like a very well-dressed guard dog. Lena tried to work normally, but her hands shook every time she thought about Castellano's words. Was he right? Was she just a sentimental loose end that Dante would eliminate once his father was gone? Her phone rang at 2 o'clock. Dante. We need to talk, in person. Can you close the cafe early? Why? What's happening? Just close early. Thomas will pick you up at 4. Dante's voice was harder than usual. And Lena? Don't be scared. You're not a loose end. You're family now, whether you like it or not. He hung up before she could ask what the hell that meant. Thomas arrived precisely at 4, and the drive to Beacon Hill felt different this time. Heavier. When they arrived, Dante was waiting at the front door instead of in his office. First time Lena had ever seen him outside the house's interior. Come with me. He led her not to Giovanni's study or the dining room, but to a room she'd never seen before. A sleek modern office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Dante's space, clearly. All clean lines and controlled efficiency. He gestured to a leather chair. Sit. We need to discuss some things that should have been addressed weeks ago. Lena sat, her heart hammering. Dante remained standing, pacing the length of the windows like a caged predator. Richard Castellano works for a development corporation we shut down 6 months ago, Dante began. Or rather, we thought we shut down. Apparently, they've been operating under new names, trying to circumvent the protections we put in place for your building and several others in the North End. I don't understand. Why do they care about my building specifically? Because it's a test case. If they can break our agreement with you, it proves we're not as powerful as we claim, that our protection is meaningless. Dante stopped pacing, turning to face her. Castellano coming to your cafe wasn't about buying your lease. It was about sending a message to you and to us that we can't protect our interests. So what happens now? Now we send a message back. Dante's smile was cold. North End Renewal Corporation will discover that their permits for 3 other projects have been mysteriously delayed. Their primary investor will have concerns about their due diligence. Their CEO will receive some very uncomfortable questions from federal investigators about campaign finance violations. Lena felt sick. You're going to destroy them. I'm going to remind them why people don't cross the Moretti family. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're proving Castellano right, that you're dangerous, that I should be scared. Dante crossed to his desk and pulled out a folder, tossing it on the table between them. Open it. And inside was a legal document, dense, technical, but one phrase stood out. Irrevocable trust. What is this? Insurance, protection. Call it whatever you want. Dante sat down across from her. The renovations to your cafe, your lease, everything we've provided, it's all been transferred to an irrevocable trust. If something happens to my father or to me, the trust continues. You can't be evicted. The terms can't be changed. You're protected permanently. Why would you do this? Because my father asked me to. Because he's terrified that after he's gone, someone in our organization might view you as a liability and try to solve the problem. Dante's expression was grim. And because despite my better judgment, I've come to respect you. You deserve protection, and this is how I protect people. Lena stared at the document, trying to process. So Castellano was wrong. I'm not a loose end. You're the opposite of a loose end. You're untouchable. Dante leaned back, which is why I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Castellano and anyone else who thinks they can use you to get to us. By destroying his company. By defending what's mine. Dante's eyes flashed. And yes, by extension, defending you, whether you like the methods or not. Lena thought about her grandmother, who taught her that kindness was strength, that helping people didn't make you weak. She thought about Giovanni's confession of manipulation and his advice about bravery. She thought about the choice in front of her, accept the Moretti's protection with all its moral complications, or refuse and face the predators alone. I don't like it, she said finally, but I'm not naive enough to pretend I have better options. So thank you for the trust and for dealing with Castellano. You're welcome. Dante stood. My father wants to see you. He's in the study. Lena found Giovanni where she'd left him Friday, in his chair by the fire, looking smaller than before. But his smile when he saw her was bright. Lena, Dante told me about the trouble today. Are you all right? I'm fine. Confused, but fine. She sat down across from him. You set up a trust to protect me? I set up insurance because I've made enough enemies to know that my death might create complications. I wanted you shielded from any fallout. Giovanni's expression was serious. You saved me once, Lena, with simple kindness. Now I'm returning the favor in the only way I know how, with legal documents and implied threats. It's not elegant, but it's effective. It's terrifying. Power usually is. He poured wine. But it's yours now, whether you wanted it or not. The Moretti name protects you. Our resources defend you. And in return, all I still ask is what I've always asked. Keep having dinner with me until I'm gone. After that, you're free. Lena accepted the wine, swirling it thoughtfully. What if I want to keep having dinner? After you're gone, I mean. With Dante. Both Morettis looked shocked. Giovanni delighted. Dante wary. Why would you want that? Dante asked. Because over months of Friday dinners and chess games and quiet conversations, Lena had realized something uncomfortable. The Morettis were dangerous, morally compromised, and everything she should run from. But they were also the only people in Boston who'd fought for her, protected her, treated her dreams like they mattered. Because loneliness is universal, she said simply. Your father recognized it in me, and I recognize it in both of you. So maybe after, she couldn't say after he dies. Maybe after we keep the tradition going. New terms, no contract, just two people having dinner because they choose to, not because they have to. Giovanni's eyes filled with tears. Lena Hart, you continue to surprise me. Dante said nothing, but something shifted in his expression, the ice cracking just slightly to reveal something warmer underneath. The sadness lingered through the weekend, settling into Lena's bones like the damp cold of a Boston winter. She couldn't stop thinking about Giovanni's brutal honesty, the way he'd admitted to using her compassion while simultaneously claiming to value it. The contradiction shouldn't have made sense, but it did in a terrible way that kept her awake at night. Monday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Lena was opening the café when Dante Moretti walked through the door, and the shock of seeing him in her space, this man who belonged to mansion studies and backroom deals, nearly made her drop the keys. We're not open yet, she said, more from reflex than actual desire to turn him away. I know. I wanted to talk to you before your morning rush. Dante looked around the café with the same assessing gaze he'd used on her that first night. The renovations are impressive. Sophia says you have excellent taste. Sophia's being generous. I picked the cheapest options that didn't look cheap. Smart. Dante's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. My father asked me to check on you. He was concerned about how you left Friday night. Lena turned away, busying herself with the espresso machine. I'm fine. You're a terrible liar. Dante moved to the counter, standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. He told you the truth about himself, and it bothered you. Of course it bothered me. He admitted he's manipulating me. He admitted he's human, flawed, dying, desperate for something real before the end. That's not manipulation. That's just honest selfishness. Dante paused. There's a difference. Lena looked at him then, really looked at him. In the morning light streaming through the cafe windows, Dante seemed less like the cold enforcer and more like what he actually was, a son watching his father die and trying to give him whatever peace was possible. You don't approve of these dinners, Lena said. You made that clear from the start. So why are you here defending them? Because my father is happier than he's been in months. Because he talks about you constantly, your intelligence, your spirit, the way you actually try to beat him at chess instead of letting him win. Dante's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Because I've watched him face his mortality with the kind of fear that would break most men, and somehow your Friday dinners give him something to look forward to besides pain. The espresso machine hissed, filling the silence. Lena pulled 2 shots without thinking, muscle memory guiding her hands. She slid one across the counter to Dante. I didn't expect you to drink coffee in a place like this. Why not? Dante picked up the small cup, inhaling the aroma with surprising appreciation. You make excellent coffee. My father says it's the best he's ever had. Your father is biased. My father is a lot of things, but biased isn't one of them. He built an empire on brutal honesty. Dante sipped the espresso, and something in his expression shifted. This is exceptional. It's just coffee. No, it's craft, skill, the kind of attention to detail that separates adequate from excellent. Dante set down the cup. My father sees that in you, the way you approach everything with that same careful precision. It's why he trusts you. Lena laughed, the sound bitter. He trusts me? The man who just admitted he's using my compassion trusts me. More than he's trusted anyone outside family in decades. Dante's eyes held hers. Do you know how many people have tried to get close to my father over the years? How many have offered friendship, companionship, whatever they thought he wanted? He saw through all of them. But you didn't try. You just gave an old man coffee and carried his bags. No ulterior motive, no calculation, just kindness. And now I'm bound to him by contract. Now you're bound to him by choice. You could have walked away. We both know that. The building sale would have proceeded, yes, but you could have found another location, started over somewhere else. Dante leaned against the counter. You chose to stay and fight on your own terms. That takes courage. or stupidity. The line between the two is thinner than most people think. Dante finished his espresso in one smooth motion. Keep coming to dinner, Miss Hart. Not because of the contract, but because my father needs someone who sees him as more than his reputation. Someone who'll tell him the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Like he told me the truth Friday night? Exactly like that. Dante straightened, adjusting his suit jacket with precise movements. He's testing you, pushing to see if you'll break or run. If you pass, he'll trust you with things he's never told anyone. If you fail, he shrugged. Well, you'll have fulfilled your contract and walked away wealthy. Either way, you'll be fine. And you? What do you want from all this? Dante paused at the door, his hand on the handle. I want my father to die in peace instead of fear. If you can give him that, Miss Hart, I'll be in your debt. And a Moretti's debt is worth something in this city. Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with 2 empty espresso cups and more questions than answers. The conversation stayed with her through the week. She found herself watching Giovanni differently during their next dinner, seeing the layers beneath his carefully maintained facade. He was testing her, Dante had said, pushing to see if she'd break. Well, Lena had grown up poor and scrappy, fighting for every scrap of stability in a world designed to crush people like her. If Giovanni Moretti thought she'd break easily, he was about to learn otherwise. You're quiet tonight, Giovanni observed over the main course. Usually by now you've told me at least 3 stories about difficult customers. I'm thinking. Dangerous activity. About what? Lena set down her fork. About why you really want me here. Not the surface reason, the companionship and humanity and all that. The real reason. Giovanni's eyes sharpened with interest. Go on. You're dying and it terrifies you. Not the physical death. You're too practical to fear that. But the idea that you'll be forgotten, or worse, remembered only for the terrible things you've done. So you're trying to create one genuine relationship at the end. Something pure that proves you were capable of more than violence. She met his gaze directly. But here's the thing, Mr. Moretti. I can't give you redemption. I can't absolve your sins or rewrite your history. All I can do is sit here on Friday nights and talk to you like you're human. That has to be enough, because it's all I have to offer. The silence stretched. Giovanni slowly set down his own fork, his expression unreadable. My son warned you, he said finally. Told you I was testing you. He told me you needed truth more than comfort. And which do you think I deserve? I think you deserve whatever you can live with in your final months. Truth, comfort, both, neither. That's not my decision. I'm just here because we have a deal, and because, despite everything, I actually enjoy these dinners. Lena picked up her wine glass. Is that honest enough for you? Giovanni laughed, a real delighted sound that dissolved into coughing, but when he recovered his eyes were bright. You're extraordinary, Miss Hart, absolutely extraordinary. Most people spend their whole lives learning to be that direct. You do it like breathing. I learned early that pretty lies just make things hurt worse in the end. A hard lesson. Painful. Giovanni refilled both their glasses. I'm going to tell you something now, and I need you to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? Lena nodded, her heart suddenly racing. I've done terrible things. I told you that before, but I don't think you understand the scope. I've ordered men killed for betrayal, for weakness, for simply being in the way. I've destroyed businesses that wouldn't pay protection. I've corrupted politicians and judges and police. For 40 years, I shaped this city through fear and violence, and I told myself it was necessary, that I was building something that would last. He stared into his wine like it held answers. But the truth is, I enjoyed it. The power, the control, the way people looked at me with fear and respect. I wasn't some reluctant villain forced into crime by circumstance. I chose this life because it made me feel like something more than the poor Sicilian immigrant who arrived with nothing. Why are you telling me this? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Because I need someone to know who I really am and choose to sit with me anyway. Not out of fear or obligation, but because you've looked at the monster and decided he's still worth 3 hours on a Friday night. Giovanni's hands trembled slightly. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Miss Hart. I'm asking for witness. Someone who will remember that Giovanni Moretti was more than just his crimes.
even if only slightly more. Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. You're asking me to carry that? The weight of knowing what you've done and still treating you with kindness? Yes, it's selfish and unfair, and you have every right to refuse. And if I do refuse, if I walk out right now, then the contract stands, the renovations continue, and we'll spend our remaining dinners playing chess in silence. I won't punish you for choosing self-preservation over compassion. Giovanni smiled sadly. I'd actually respect you more for it. Lena stood and walked to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens lit by spotlights that turned everything golden. Behind her, she could hear Giovanni's labored breathing, the quiet clink of his wine glass on the table. This man who'd built an empire on fear was asking her to see him, truly see him, and not look away. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Kindness costs nothing, mija, but it's worth everything to the person who receives it. But her grandmother had never had to extend kindness to someone who'd admitted to murder. I need to know something, Lena said without turning around. These people you killed, were any of them innocent, just in the wrong place, wrong time? No. Giovanni's answer was immediate. I've committed many sins, Miss Hart, but killing innocents isn't among them. Everyone who died by my order was part of this world. They knew the risks. That's supposed to make it better? That's supposed to be the truth, which is what you asked for. Lena turned back to face him. Giovanni sat at the head of the table, looking smaller and frailer than ever, but his eyes held steady on hers, waiting for judgment or acceptance or whatever she decided to give him. I'll stay, she said quietly, not because I forgive you or think you deserve peace, but because my grandmother taught me that even the worst people are still people, and people shouldn't die alone if they don't have to. That's more than I deserve. Probably, but it's what I'm offering anyway. Lena returned to her seat. Now finish your dinner before it gets cold, and next week I'm bringing a book of chess problems. You need more of a challenge. Giovanni's smile was radiant despite his exhaustion. As you wish, Miss Hart, as you wish. The following weeks brought a shift in their dynamic. Giovanni stopped performing, stopped trying to charm or manipulate. He talked about his life with brutal honesty, the violence, yes, but also the fear that had driven it. Growing up poor in Sicily, watching his father get beaten by landlords who saw them as less than human. Coming to America with nothing and building something that made people respect the Moretti name, even if that respect was rooted in terror. I wanted to matter, he said during their 11th dinner, to be someone who couldn't be ignored or dismissed, and I succeeded. But the cost? He gestured vaguely at the mansion around them. This empire will crumble when I die. Dante will maintain it for a while, but his heart isn't in it the way mine was. He's too smart, too modern. He'll legitimize what he can and distance himself from the rest. Is that what you want for him? I want him to be free of my shadow, to build something that doesn't require fear to sustain it. Giovanni's voice roughened. But I also know I've trapped him in this life, given him no real choice but to follow the path I laid. Have you told him that? We don't talk about such things. Morettis communicate through actions, not feelings. Maybe that's the problem, Lena said gently. Maybe he needs to hear that you want better for him than what you had. Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. You're probably right, but some patterns are too old to break, even at the end. Lena understood that. Her own relationship with her mother had been defined by silence and missed opportunities. They'd never talked about the important things, and then her mother had died in a hospital bed while Lena held her hand and all the unspoken words died with her. She told Giovanni this story, and he listened with the fierce attention he brought to everything she said. Then you understand, he said when she finished, why changing is so hard, even when you know you should. I understand, but I also know that regret tastes worse than fear. So maybe you try anyway. Maybe you tell Dante what you want for him, even if it comes out wrong. At least then you won't die wondering if you should have. When did you become so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just someone who's made enough mistakes to recognize them in other people. Giovanni reached across the table and squeezed her hand. His skin was paper thin, bones prominent beneath. Thank you, Miss Hart, for your honesty, for your time, for seeing me as more than my worst acts. You're welcome,
Now let's play chess. I've been practicing. She had been practicing, spending late nights studying openings and strategies on her laptop. Giovanni noticed immediately, his eyes lighting up as she deployed a Sicilian defense he'd never seen her use before. "You've been studying," he said with delight. "I told you I was competitive." "Good. I was getting bored winning so easily." The game was intense. Both of them focused completely on the board. Lina lost, but barely, and the pride in Giovanni's face when he captured her king made her feel like she'd won something more important than a chess match. The cafe renovations finished in early January, right on Sophia's promised 4-month timeline. Lina stood in her transformed space and couldn't quite believe it was real. The new espresso machine gleamed like a promise. The expanded kitchen gave her room to breathe. Fresh paint and new flooring made everything feel clean and possible. "It's perfect," she told Sophia, blinking back tears. "Better than I imagined. Mr. Moretti was very specific about what he wanted for you." Sophia handed her a final folder. "These are the warranties and maintenance guides. Anything breaks, you call me directly. Mr. Moretti's orders." After Sophia left, Lina walked through the cafe touching everything, making sure it was real. Her business. Her dream. Saved by a deal with the devil that had somehow become something more complicated than simple transaction. That Friday, she brought Giovanni photos of the finished renovations. He studied each one carefully, asking questions about workflow and customer response, and whether the new setup would increase her capacity. "It already has," Lina told him. "I'm averaging 30% more customers per day. The new space just flows better, and people notice the upgrades." "Good. That's very good." Giovanni set down the photos. "You should hire help. You're running yourself ragged trying to manage it all alone." "I'm interviewing next week, looking for someone part-time to start." "Make sure they're trustworthy. In my experience, the people you hire can make or break a business." "Speaking from experience?" "I've hired thousands of people over the years. Some became invaluable. Others," he shrugged, "others required correction. But you'll be fine. You have good instincts about people." They played chess. Giovanni won again, but it took him an hour and Lena could see the strain in his face by the end. His health was declining more rapidly now. Some weeks he could barely make it through dinner before exhaustion claimed him. Dante had started hovering more, appearing in doorways with concerned looks he tried to hide. "My son worries too much," Giovanni said when Dante checked on them for the 3rd time that evening. "He loves you. That's not the same as worrying." "Perhaps." Giovanni moved his rook with careful precision. "Has he spoken to you again? Beyond that morning visit to your cafe?" "No." "Why would he?" "Because he asks about you. Every week after you leave, he wants to know what we talked about, whether you seemed comfortable, if I said anything that upset you." Giovanni captured one of Lena's nights. "I think you've made an impression, Miss Hart." Lena felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure he just wants to make sure I'm not going to suddenly back out of our deal." "No, it's more than that. Dante doesn't waste energy on business that's settled. If he's asking about you, it's personal interest." "Well, he can keep his personal interest to himself. I'm not interested in getting any more entangled with your family than I already am." Giovanni's smile was knowing. "Of course not. My mistake." But Lena thought about Dante more than she wanted to admit. The way he'd looked at her that morning in the cafe, the quiet respect in his voice when he talked about his father's trust, the glimpses of humanity beneath the cold control. She pushed the thoughts away. Dante Moretti was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with his criminal connections, the kind of dangerous that made you forget your boundaries and make terrible decisions. Winter deepened into February. Giovanni's cancer progressed despite the treatments. Some weeks he could barely eat, pushing food around his plate while Lena talked to fill the silence. Other weeks he'd rally, his old energy returning in bursts that felt almost normal. "The doctors say I might have until spring," he told her during their 16th dinner. "Maybe summer if I'm lucky. But the pain is getting worse. They've increased my medications 3 times this month." "I'm sorry," Lena said, because what else could she say? "Don't be. I've had more time than I deserved, more grace than I earned." He looked at her with sudden intensity. "These dinners, Miss Hart, they've been the best part of my final year. I want you to know that." "They've been important to me too," Lena admitted. "You've taught me things.
About chess, about life, about how complicated people can be? Have I changed your mind about me? Made you see me as less of a monster? Lena considered the question carefully. You're still a monster, but you're also a man who loves his son and misses his wife and genuinely enjoys a good chess match. Both things are true. I can live with that assessment, or die with it, as the case may be. Giovanni's smile was peaceful. Thank you for your honesty. Always your honesty. In March, Giovanni collapsed during dinner. One moment he was reaching for his wine glass, the next he was on the floor, Lena screaming for help while trying to remember the CPR training she'd taken years ago. Dante appeared like he'd been waiting for disaster, already calling 911 while kneeling beside his father. Papa, stay with me, Dante said, his voice cracking. Come on, stay with me. Giovanni's eyes fluttered open. Dante, too much fuss. Shut up and breathe. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Lena watched them load Giovanni onto a stretcher, saw the fear in his eyes that he was trying to hide. She started to follow, but Dante stopped her with a hand on her arm. Go home, Miss Hart. There's nothing you can do at the hospital. He's my friend. The words surprised them both. Dante's grip loosened, something like understanding crossing his face. He'd want you safe, not sitting in a waiting room all night. Dante's voice gentled. I'll call you when we know something. I promise. The call came at 3 a.m. Lena grabbed her phone on the second ring, heart pounding. He's stable, Dante said without preamble. Dehydration and a minor cardiac episode. They're keeping him overnight for observation, but he's arguing with the nurses, so I think he'll be fine. Can I see him? Tomorrow. He's sedated now, and visiting hours don't start until 9. A pause. Thank you for being there tonight, for calling for help, for caring. Of course I care. Lena stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. He's my father, Dante said quietly, but he's also your friend. I understand that now. After Dante hung up, Lena sat in her dark apartment and cried. For Giovanni, who was running out of time. For herself, who'd somehow gotten attached to a dying mob boss. For the impossible situation that kept getting more complicated the longer she was in it. She visited Giovanni the next morning, bringing flowers because that's what you did for sick people in hospitals, even if those people had ordered murders in corrupted cities. He was sitting up in bed, looking annoyed and exhausted in equal measure. Miss Hart, you didn't have to come. Yes, I did. Lena set the flowers on his bedside table. How are you feeling? Like death warmed over, which is appropriate given the circumstances. But his eyes softened. I'm sorry for scaring you last night. You're forgiven, but only if you promise to take better care of yourself. I'm dying, Miss Hart. Care only delays the inevitable. Then delay it. I'm not done learning chess from you yet. Giovanni's laugh turned into a cough, but his smile was genuine. Then I suppose I'll have to stick around a bit longer. Can't leave your chess education incomplete. The call came on a Tuesday morning in late April, 6 months after that rainy night, when Lena had carried shopping bags for a stranger. She was restocking the pastry case when her phone buzzed, Dante's name on the screen, which was unusual. He never called, only texted, brief and businesslike. Miss Hart. His voice was rough, stripped of its usual controlled polish. My father's asking for you. The hospice nurses say it's time. Lena's hands went numb. The croissant she'd been holding dropped back into the case. I'll be right there. She didn't remember the cab ride to the Moretti mansion, didn't remember Thomas meeting her at the door with red-rimmed eyes, didn't remember climbing the stairs to the second floor where Giovanni's bedroom had been converted into a hospice suite. What she remembered was the silence, thick and suffocating, like the house itself was holding its breath. Dante stood outside the bedroom door, still wearing yesterday's suit, wrinkled and disheveled in a way she'd never seen him. He looked up when she approached, and the devastation in his eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. He's been asking for you since midnight, Dante said. His voice cracked slightly. Wouldn't let the nurses give him the morphine until you got here. Said he needed to be clear-headed for one last conversation. How long does he have? Hours? Maybe less. Dante ran a hand through his hair, the gesture uncharacteristically uncertain.
He's lucid now, but the nurse said that won't last. When you're ready. Lena pushed open the door before she could lose her nerve. The bedroom was enormous, but felt small, compressed by medical equipment and the smell of antiseptic trying to mask something deeper. Giovanni lay in a hospital bed positioned by the window, sunlight streaming across white sheets that made his skin look even more translucent. He was impossibly thin, barely a shadow of the man who'd stumbled into her café 6 months ago, but his eyes were clear when they found hers, and his smile was real. Lena. He breathed her name like a prayer. You came. Of course I came. She pulled a chair close to the bed, took his hand. The bones felt fragile as bird wings beneath papery skin. You asked for me. I've been asking for you for days, in my head, planning what to say. He coughed weakly, and Lena helped him sip water from a straw. But now that you're here, I find I've forgotten all my speeches. Then don't make speeches, just talk to me. Giovanni's smile widened slightly. You've gotten bolder these past months, less afraid. You've gotten smaller, less terrifying. Lena squeezed his hand gently. We grew into each other, I think. Yes. Yes, we did. His eyes drifted to the window where spring rain was starting to fall, gentle, not like that October storm that had brought them together. I need to tell you something about why I really invited you here. Not the dinners. The real reason. Lena waited, her heart suddenly pounding. When you helped me that night, when you walked me to my car without hesitation, I saw my mother in you. She died when I was 7, back in Sicily. I barely remember her face, but I remember how she treated strangers, with the same automatic kindness you showed me. Giovanni's voice grew distant. My father was a hard man. He taught me that kindness was weakness, that mercy was failure. I spent 60 years proving him right. He turned back to Lena, tears tracking down his weathered face. But at the end, all I could think about was my mother. How disappointed she would be. How I'd taken everything she tried to teach me and turned it into something monstrous. And then you appeared like her ghost, reminding me that kindness still exists in this world, that I once knew how to recognize it. Mr. Moretti? Giovanni, please. I'm just Giovanni now. He gripped her hand with surprising strength. I used you, Lena. Used your compassion to make myself feel less damned. That was selfish and manipulative, and I won't apologize for it because we both know that's who I am. But I want you to know, these months with you, these dinners and chess games and honest conversations, they gave me something I didn't deserve. Peace. Just a little. Just enough. Lena felt tears burning her own eyes. You gave me my dream back. My café, my future. We used each other. That makes us even. No, child, you gave me far more. Giovanni's breathing was becoming labored. Promise me something. Anything. Don't let my son turn into me. He's already halfway there, all control and calculation, afraid to feel anything because feelings make you vulnerable. But he's capable of more. I've seen it in how he talks about you. Giovanni's eyes sharpened. He thinks you're remarkable, dangerous, because you make him question himself. Promise me you'll keep being dangerous. Before Lena could respond, the door opened. A nurse entered, her expression professionally compassionate. I'm sorry, but Mr. Moretti needs his medication now. The pain is getting worse. 5 more minutes, Giovanni whispered. Please. The nurse hesitated, then nodded and withdrew. Giovanni turned back to Lena with visible effort. The contracts. All your obligations end with me. Dante will try to tell you otherwise. We'll find some legal loophole to keep you bound to the family. Don't let him. You've fulfilled our agreement. You owe us nothing. He coughed again, harder. But if you choose to stay, if you choose to give my son a chance, do it on your own terms. Make him work for it. Make him earn what I never did. Giovanni. I'm tired now, so tired. His eyes were already closing. Thank you, Lena Hart, for seeing the man beneath the monster, for giving an old killer some grace at the end. You're welcome, Lena whispered. Rest now. She sat with him while the nurse administered the morphine, watched his breathing slow and even out. When it was clear he was asleep, she stood to leave. Dante was still outside the door, exactly where she'd left him. He said what he needed to say? Dante asked. Yes. Lena looked at this cold, controlled man and saw the terrified boy beneath. He told me to keep being dangerous. I think that was his way of saying goodbye. That sounds like him. Dante's voice was hollow. Making plans even on his deathbed. He also said my obligations end with him, that you'd try to find ways to keep me bound to the family, but I shouldn't let you. Something flickered across Dante's face. Surprise, maybe respect. He knows me too well. He loves you too much. Lena moved toward the stairs. I should go. Let you have time with him. Lena. Her name in Dante's voice stopped her. Not Miss Hart, just Lena, raw and unguarded. Stay, please. I can't do this alone. She turned back. Dante Moretti, the man who made politicians nervous and enemies disappear, looked lost in a way that made her chest ache. Okay, she said softly. I'll stay. They sat together in Giovanni's study, the room where this had all begun, while the house filled with doctors and nurses and quiet preparations. Neither of them spoke much. Dante stared at the chess set where Lena and Giovanni had played their last game, his jaw tight and his eyes bright with unshed tears. He was teaching me chess when I was 4, Dante said suddenly. I couldn't even reach the board properly, so he'd lift me onto his lap. He said chess taught you to think 10 moves ahead, to see patterns others missed, to never make a move without knowing all possible outcomes. That explains a lot about you, Lena murmured. It made me good at what I do, but it also made me... He trailed off, searching for words. Incapable of spontaneity, of trusting anything I haven't planned for. My father built an empire on instinct and relationships. I've been trying to systematize it, make it predictable, safe. Is that what he wanted? No. He wanted me to be better than him, to take what he built and transform it into something legitimate, something that wouldn't destroy me the way his choices destroyed him. Dante finally looked at her. He thought you could help with that. Me? I run a café, Dante. I'm not equipped to help you dismantle a criminal empire. You're equipped to remind me what normal looks like, what genuine human connection feels like outside of transactions and power plays. He stood, moving to the window. Rain streaked the glass, turning the streetlights into watercolor smears. These past 6 months, watching you with him, you never treated him like a means to an end. Even when you knew what he was, you still saw him as a person. That's extraordinary. It's called basic decency. In my world, basic decency is extraordinary. Dante's laugh was bitter. Do you know how many people have tried to get close to my father over the years? Hundreds. All wanting something, favors, protection, a piece of his power. And he could smell their greed from miles away. But you just wanted to give an old man coffee and help him to his car. I didn't know who he was. Exactly. And even after you knew, you still came back, still played chess with him, still listened to his stories about Sicily and my mother and his regrets. Dante turned back to her, and his expression was naked in a way that made Lena's breath catch. He died happy because of you, as happy as a man like him could die. That's a gift I can never repay. Before Lena could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway. Her face said everything. Dante's composure shattered. He made a sound like he'd been punched, then was moving, past the nurse, up the stairs. Lena followed at a distance, giving him space for private grief. She waited in the hallway while Dante said goodbye to his father. The sounds that came from that room were awful. A grown man's broken sobs, Italian words she couldn't understand but felt in her bones. When Dante finally emerged 20 minutes later, his eyes were dry but devastated. He's gone. 2 words, flat and final. I'm so sorry. Don't be. He was ready. Dante straightened his shoulders, and Lena watched the mask slide back into place, the cold control reasserting itself. There will be arrangements to make. A funeral. The family will need to be notified. You should go home, Lena. This is going to get complicated. Let me help. You've done enough. But his tone wasn't dismissive. More than enough. Go home. I'll have Thomas drive you. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could stay, but the set of Dante's jaw told her he needed to be alone with his grief and his responsibilities. So she nodded and let Thomas drive her back to the North End, back to her cafe and her apartment, and the life that suddenly felt very small and very safe. The funeral was held 4 days later at a cathedral in the North End, and it was exactly as surreal as Lena had imagined. The church was packed with an impossible mix of people, politicians in expensive suits sitting beside men who looked like they'd stepped out of mob movies, society women clutching rosaries next to hard-eyed men with visible scars. The entire city seemed to have turned out to pay respects to Giovanni Moretti, whether from genuine grief or calculated politics. Lena sat in the back, trying to be invisible. She wore the only black dress she owned, simple, bought secondhand, and felt desperately out of place among the designer clothes and old money. But when Dante stood to deliver the eulogy, his eyes found hers in the crowd and held for just a moment. "My father," Dante began, his voice carrying through the cathedral's vast space, was a complicated man. He built an empire that made him powerful and feared. He made choices that haunted him. And at the end, he sought redemption in small acts of kindness and human connection. He spoke for 10 minutes about Giovanni's legacy, his love for his family, his complicated relationship with the city he'd shaped. But what Lena remembered most was the raw honesty in Dante's voice when he said, "He taught me that power without purpose is just violence, that an empire built on fear alone will crumble, and that sometimes the bravest thing a strong man can do is admit he was wrong." After the service, there was a reception at the Moretti mansion, hundreds of people offering condolences and sharing stories. Lena tried to slip away, but Dante caught her at the door. "You're leaving?" He looked exhausted, his face drawn beneath the perfect composure. "I don't belong here, Dante. These are your people, your world. You were more important to my father in his last months than most of these people were in his entire life." Dante's grip on her arm was gentle but firm. "Please stay, just for a little while." So Lena stayed, nursing a glass of wine in corners and watching Dante work the room with practiced efficiency. He was magnetic in grief, controlled, gracious, every inch the heir to an empire. But she could see the cracks in the armor, the moments when his eyes went distant and his jaw tightened. As the evening wore on and guests began to leave, Lena found herself alone in Giovanni's study. The chess set was still arranged from their last game, a move she'd never gotten to make frozen in time. She was studying the board when Dante entered. "Reminiscing?" He closed the door behind him, and suddenly the vast room felt intimate. "Wondering what move I would have made if we'd had time for one more game." "Knight to bishop 4. That's what you were setting up. I watched enough of your games with him to recognize your patterns." Dante moved the piece on the board. "It wouldn't have worked. He would have countered with his rook and had you in checkmate in 3 moves. "How do you know?" "Because it's exactly what I would have done." Dante studied the board, then looked at her. "My father was right about you. You are dangerous." "Because I'm bad at chess?" "Because you make people want to be better than they are. You made him want to be remembered as more than a monster. You're making me want—" He stopped, seemed to wrestle with something internal. "The contracts. All your obligations are void as of today. Your lease remains at 99 years, the renovations are complete, but the profit-sharing agreement and the dinner requirements are finished. You're free." Lena had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a door closing. "Just like that?" "Just like that. My father's will was very specific. You fulfilled your agreement. You owe the Moretti family nothing." Dante pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is a notarized document confirming the termination of all obligations. Your lawyer can review it, but you'll find everything in order." She took the envelope, the paper heavy in her hands. "So this is goodbye." "If you want it to be." Dante's voice was carefully neutral. "You can walk away from all of this, the family, the complications, the moral ambiguity of being associated with us. No one would blame you. It's probably the smart choice." "And if I don't want to walk away?" The question hung in the air between them. Dante's expression shifted, that perfect control cracking just enough for her to see the want beneath. "Then you'd be choosing to stay in a world you don't fully understand, with a man you have every reason to distrust, For no logical reason except he moved closer. Except perhaps curiosity, or stubbornness, or some combination of both.
You forgot one option. Lena set the envelope on the chess table. What if I'm staying because despite everything, despite who you are and what your family does, I want to see who you might become if someone gave you the same gift I gave your father. What gift? Permission to be human. Not the boss, not the heir, just Dante. She met his eyes directly. Your father said you thought I was dangerous because I make you question yourself. He asked me to keep being dangerous. So here's my question. Are you brave enough to let me? Dante went very still. You're offering what exactly? Friendship? Salvation? Some kind of redemption project? I'm offering dinner. One dinner. No obligations, no contracts. Just two people getting to know each other without the weight of dying fathers and desperate deals. Lena's voice steadied. You want to transform your father's empire into something legitimate? You want to be better than what you were raised to be? Then show me.
Not with words or promises, but with actions. Take me to dinner as Dante, not as Dante Moretti. And we'll see what happens. This is insane. But Dante's voice held something that might have been hope. You don't know me. Not really. I've done things that would horrify you. Probably. Your father didn't hide what he was, and I don't expect you to either. Lena took a breath. But I also saw how you took care of him these past months. How you made sure I was protected even when you disagreed with his choices. How you're trying to honor his dying wishes, even though it goes against every instinct you have. That's who I'm willing to have dinner with. Dante studied her for a long moment, and Lena could see him calculating, weighing risks, trying to predict outcomes the way his father had taught him. Then something shifted in his expression. A decision made, a pattern broken. Okay. The word came out rough. One dinner. But not here, not in my world. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere I can't control the variables. My café, Lena suggested. After hours. I'll cook. You'll wash dishes. We'll talk like normal people. I don't know how to be normal people. Then I'll teach you, just like your father taught me chess. A smile ghosted across Dante's face, genuine, unguarded. He'd like that. The symmetry of it. He'd like that you're trying. Lena moved toward the door. Tomorrow night? 8 o'clock? Tomorrow night. Dante nodded. Lena, thank you for everything. For my father, for staying at the funeral, for this, whatever this becomes. Thank me after dinner. If you survive my cooking, we'll call it even. She left him standing in his father's study, beside a chess game that would never be finished, and felt something shift in her chest. This was reckless, probably stupid, definitely complicated. But Giovanni had asked her to keep being dangerous, and what was more dangerous than choosing to walk toward something unknown instead of running toward something safe? The next evening, Lena closed the cafe at 7 and spent an hour cleaning and preparing. She wasn't sure what to cook for a man who probably ate at five-star restaurants, so she defaulted to comfort food, the kind her grandmother used to make. Pasta carbonara, simple salad, bread from the Italian bakery down the street. Dante arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, and Lena almost didn't recognize him. No suit, just jeans and a simple black sweater, hair slightly messy like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked younger, less armored, and the sight of him made her breath catch. I wasn't sure about the dress code, he said, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen. Is this too casual? It's perfect. Lena gestured him inside. Come on, you're on dish duty, remember? They worked together in the cafe's small kitchen, and the domesticity of it was surreal. Dante Moretti, heir to a criminal empire, drying plates while Lena finished the pasta. They talked about small things, his favorite foods growing up, her memories of cooking with her grandmother, the strange intimacy of working side by side. When they finally sat down to eat, the conversation deepened. Dante asked about her dreams for the cafe, her plans for the future now that she had stability. Lena asked about his vision for transforming his father's legacy, what that actually meant in practical terms. I want to legitimize everything, Dante said, twirling pasta on his fork. The restaurants, the construction companies, the real estate holdings.
They're all profitable on their own without the extra services. It'll take years, and some people in the organization won't like it, but it's what my father wanted in the end. A clean legacy. Is it what you want? I want to be able to sleep at night without wondering if someone's going to kick down my door with a warrant or a gun. Dante set down his fork. I want to build something that lasts without requiring fear to maintain it. I want... He stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. I want to be someone my father could be proud of. The man he was trying to become, not the man he was. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. It's the only pressure that matters. Dante looked at her directly. My father spent 6 months trying to be human with you. I watched him transform, saw him laugh more in those dinners than I'd seen in years. He died at peace because you gave him permission to be more than his worst choices. I want that too. Not redemption exactly. Just possibility. Lena reached across the table and took his hand. Then here's your permission. You're allowed to be more than your father's legacy. You're allowed to fail and try again. You're allowed to be human, Dante. You just have to choose it. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. It's just not easy. She squeezed his hand. But I'm willing to help if you are. They finished dinner and moved to the cafe's main room, where Dante noticed the chess set Lena kept on a corner table. One game, for old time's sake? They played for an hour, and Dante was as ruthless as his father had been. But Lena had learned from her games with Giovanni, and she made him work for the win. When he finally checkmated her, his smile was triumphant. You've improved significantly. Good teacher. Lena started resetting the pieces. Your father said I should trust my instincts more. Stop second-guessing. He told me the same thing once. I rarely listened. Dante helped her put away the pieces. I should go. It's late, and you have to open early. They stood by the cafe's door, and the moment felt weighted with possibility. Dante looked at her like he was solving an equation he didn't have all the variables for. This was nice, he said finally. Surprisingly normal, thank you. Same time next week? Lena asked. Or is once enough to prove you can be human? Next week. And the week after that, if you'll have me. Dante's voice was rough. I'm not good at this, Lena. At connecting with people outside of business or family obligations. I'll probably mess it up. Then we'll figure it out together, she smiled. That's what normal people do. They make mistakes and forgive each other and keep trying. Dante nodded slowly, then did something that surprised them both. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, gentle and tentative. Good night, Lena Hart. Thank you for being dangerous. After he left, Lena stood in her cafe and tried to process what had just happened. She'd started this journey 6 months ago with a simple act of kindness for a stranger in the rain. That stranger had turned out to be a dying mob boss who trapped her in a deal that should have destroyed her life. Instead, it had transformed it. Her cafe was thriving now, renovated and beautiful. Her customer base had grown as word spread about the North End's best espresso. The developer who'd threatened her building had mysteriously backed off, and her 99-year lease was solid as stone. But more than that, she'd found something unexpected in the ruins of what should have been a disaster: connection, purpose. The strange gift of watching two complicated men, a father and son, try to become better than their pasts. Giovanni was gone, but his final request echoed: keep being dangerous, keep challenging Dante to be more than his inheritance, keep seeing the humanity beneath the armor. Lena locked up the cafe and climbed the stairs to her apartment, and for the first time in months, she felt something like hope. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the quiet hope of possibility. She didn't know what would happen with Dante, as he didn't know if his transformation would last, or if she was being naive to believe in it. But Giovanni had taught her something in those final months, that change was possible even at the end, that redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing better in the present. And if a dying mob boss could find peace, maybe his son could find purpose. Maybe they both could. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Tuesday nights became their standing dinner, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes at restaurants Dante chose, places he'd never been, neighborhoods he'd never explored, deliberately stepping outside his comfort zone. He was awkward at first, too formal and controlled, but gradually, Lena watched him relax into the moments.
Watched him laugh at her jokes without calculating the appropriate response. Watched him talk about his plans for legitimizing the family business with genuine passion instead of cold strategy. I met with the state attorney general's office this week, he told her over Thai food in Alston 2 months after Giovanni's funeral. Informal conversation about cooperation. They're interested in what I might offer in exchange for immunity for certain legacy issues. Is that safe? Lena asked. Cooperating with prosecutors? It's terrifying, but it's necessary if I want to actually transform things. Dante's expression was serious. My father's generation believed you survived by keeping everyone scared and quiet. I think you survived by building something worth protecting legally. It's a gamble. Life's a gamble, Lena smiled. At least this gamble has a purpose. Their relationship shifted gradually from careful friendship to something deeper, though neither of them rushed to define it. Dante would show up at the café during slow afternoons and sit at the counter, working on his laptop while Lena served customers. She'd join him for family dinners at the Moretti mansion. Far less formal now, just Dante and a handful of trusted advisors trying to map out the empire's future. Lena met his world in pieces. The construction crews who tipped their hats respectfully when she visited sites, the restaurant managers who treated her with careful courtesy, the lawyers and accountants who were helping Dante navigate the complicated process of going legitimate. She didn't ignore what these people had been, what some of them still were. But she also saw them trying to change, following Dante's lead toward something different. It wasn't redemption. It was just people choosing to be better than they'd been, one day at a time. On a warm evening in late September, nearly a year after that rainy October night, Dante picked Lena up after work for dinner. But instead of driving to a restaurant, he headed toward Beacon Hill. Where are we going? Lena asked. The house. There's something I want to show you. Dante's voice held an edge of nervousness that was endearing. The Moretti mansion looked different in autumn light, less intimidating, more like just a beautiful old building. Dante led her inside and up to the second floor, to Giovanni's old study. The room had been transformed. The heavy curtains were gone, replaced with sheer panels that let in natural light. The dark furniture had been swapped for lighter pieces, and covering one entire wall was a massive corkboard filled with papers, charts, timelines. This is my war room, Dante explained, for the transformation. Every business entity, every person in the organization, every step of the legitimization process. It's going to take 5 years minimum to fully transition everything, maybe 10. Lena studied the board, overwhelmed by the complexity. This is incredible. It's terrifying. Dante stood beside her. Every day I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, if my father would approve, if I'm strong enough to see it through. You are, Lena took his hand. You're already stronger than you think. I'm stronger because of you. Dante turned to face her fully. This past year since my father died, you've been my anchor, the person who reminds me why I'm doing this, who keeps me human when the pressure makes me want to retreat into cold calculation. Dante, let me finish. He took both her hands now. I'm not good at this, at feelings, at vulnerability. My father spent my whole childhood teaching me that emotion was weakness, that caring too much gave people power over you, and then you appeared and destroyed all those lessons by making me want to care anyway. Lena's heart was pounding. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm falling in love with you, and it terrifies me. Because loving someone means they can hurt you, means giving them the power to destroy you. But watching my father these past months taught me that the alternative, living without love, without real connection, that's not power. That's just slow death, Dante's voice roughened. So I'm choosing the terrifying option. I'm choosing to care about you, to want a future with you, to risk everything my father taught me to avoid. Lena felt tears burning her eyes. You don't do anything by halves, do you? Not when it matters. Not anymore. Dante lifted one hand to cup her face. I'm not asking you to love me back. Not yet. I know I'm complicated and difficult and come with more baggage than any reasonable person should accept, but I'm asking for a chance to show you who I'm becoming, to build something real that isn't based on deals or obligations, but on choice. You already had that chance. Lena smiled through her tears.
I gave it to you the night of your father's funeral, and you've been showing me who you're becoming ever since. And? The vulnerability in his voice cracked something open in her chest. And I think I'm falling in love with you too, despite every logical reason not to, despite the complications and the history and the fact that we come from completely different worlds. She pulled him closer. Your father asked me to keep being dangerous. This feels pretty dangerous. The best things usually are. Dante's smile was transformative, genuine, and unguarded. So what do we do now? Now we keep choosing each other, one day at a time, one dinner at a time, one chess game at a time. Lena reached up to kiss him, soft and certain. And we see where it leads. They stood together in Giovanni's old study, which Dante had transformed into a planning room for a better future. And Lena thought about how strange life was, how one rainy night, one cup of coffee, one act of simple kindness could cascade into something so much larger. She'd set out to save a dying man's conscience and ended up saving her own future. She'd agreed to dinners with a mob boss and found unexpected friendship. She'd been trapped by circumstances beyond her control and discovered freedom in choosing her own path forward. And now she was standing in the arms of a man trying to dismantle his father's empire and rebuild it into something clean. And that felt like the most dangerous, most hopeful thing she'd ever done. Your father would be proud of you, Lena said softly. Of this, of who you're becoming. I hope so. Dante held her tighter. I hope wherever he is, he knows I'm trying, that I'm choosing to be better. He knows, I'm sure of it. Outside, Boston's autumn evening was settling in, streetlights flickering on, the city beginning its nighttime transformation. Inside, two people who shouldn't have fit together were discovering that sometimes the most unlikely connections were the strongest ones. Lena had walked into Dante Moretti's life carrying shopping bags through a rainstorm. She was walking forward now carrying hope, choosing to build something new from the ruins of what had been. It wasn't redemption. Redemption was too big a word for what they were attempting. It was just two people. One trying to honor her grandmother's lessons about kindness. One trying to honor his father's deathbed wishes about transformation. Figuring out how to be better together than they'd been apart. The story that had started with fear and manipulation had somehow become a story about choice and possibility, about finding light in unexpected places, about learning that even people from dark worlds could reach for something brighter if someone gave them permission to try. Giovanni Moretti had wanted to be remembered as more than a monster. Watching his son hold Lena in that transformed study, building a future that honored the man Giovanni had tried to become rather than the man he'd been, Lena thought he'd gotten his wish. He'd be remembered as the man who'd loved his son enough to push him toward better things, who'd seen kindness in a stranger and held on to it like a lifeline, who'd died hoping his legacy could be transformed into something clean, and now his son was making that hope real, one difficult choice at a time. Lena kissed Dante again, deeper this time, and felt the future opening up before them. Uncertain, complicated, full of challenges neither of them could predict, but also full of possibility. And that, she thought, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.